Thank you for joining us this morning at our City Council Budget Development Meeting. We'll go ahead and get started. Ruth, could you please call the roll?
Yes, sir. Bray.
Here.
Brown. Johnston.
Here.
Moore.
Here.
Orr.
Here.
Platt.
Here. Thank you. We'll go ahead and move on, get started here. We've got our sanitation department up first, it looks like. So Joyce, we'll turn the time over to you to...
Okay, and we'll get started with sanitation fund. And with us we have Arlen and Mike Jaglowski, the Public Works Director, and Ashley Linton from the Finance Office. Okay, in the wage lines, the personnel, benefits, medical, benefits, other, you show an overall decrease of $2,245. That's just changes within, when we go to program the people, the changes that they make within their benefits, and so that's where you're seeing the change there. Down below in what I call the operating lines, that's the blue section, you'll see an overall change of an increase of $190,920. I think Arlen's going to discuss with you what the increases are related to. We'll kind of go to this section because it kind of shows it pretty simplistic. With the landfill.
So we'll start off with our landfill fees. We had an increase in our landfill, and that is basically based on the volume that the department is now taking to the landfill. An increase in all of our services, our roll-offs and all that stuff have all increased pretty significantly over the last year. So we had an increase in that line. The biggest one is in our recycling charges. As you guys were aware, we had a $100,000 increase in our recycling charges. So that's where they've been running about $12,000 a month. Last year we budgeted $100,000 for that. This year we budgeted $120,000. Hopefully it levels off now. It seems to have bottomed out, but it hasn't really started climbing yet. So
is that the recycling fee charged by the company that takes our goods?
Yes. Yes.
And that's based on commodity prices, what
Yes.
they can get for...
And currently, we're still paying about $60 a ton to Western to handle our recycling materials.
We'd be paying how much if we took it to the landfill?
25.
Okay, so there's a...
Yeah. So that's where that is. And the other increase comes in our capital outlay for our vehicles. We are scheduled to buy 2 commercial trucks and 2 side load residential trucks. The side loaders are more money than the commercial trucks and the roll-offs, which is what we bought last year, and that's why you're seeing that increase. So the residential trucks are just more money, and we have to buy 2 of them this year as opposed to 1 last year.
So total, how many trucks are we running on the residential trucks?
All of the trucks?
Yeah, how many do we have?
We have 13 side loaders. That is including the trash trucks and the recycling trucks. And actually, if you count the yard waste trucks that we're running now, we have 14.
And would they be used every day or on some type of a rotation basis?
The residential trash trucks and the recycling trucks are used every day. The yard waste trucks are run 2 days a week.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, and then
Sure.
What's sunset like?
while you're doing that,
Yard waste out.
Councilman,
Yes.
I think it's good to know that the yard waste trucks are not new trucks. They are recycled trucks from our residential route fleet.
And we have about 700 community members, or slightly under 700, that are participating in the yard
Currently.
recycle.
That's correct.
Right, and that's mostly based on the volume that the county at the landfill is able to receive from us. And it's our expectation is that if this was offered more broadly, we would definitely have more than 700
absolutely.
participants in yard waste. It really,
The other limiting factor, I think, is your availability of drop-off equipment. Isn't it that you can drop off in front of somebody's place
Well, we order our equipment based on what we think the demand is going
Is
to
that what
be.
it is?
And we know going into the season what the county's going to allow us to haul up there.
Okay, so it's based on that.
Yeah, we base it on that. If they're going to let us increase our customers by 500, we make sure we have that equipment on hand when the season starts. Because our season runs April through November. So we're talking to the landfill in basically the end of October of that following year, and we decide what our growth is going to be. Currently, it's working out. We're keeping up with what the public's asking for the most part. I mean, I think last year we ended up with only 60 on a waiting list, and this year we added 145 carts or residences, and right now we only have one on a waiting list that hasn't got a card. So it's working out well for both of us. It's expanding, but it's controlled expansion. We can, as we said earlier, the trucks that we are using are trucks that we would have traded in. We are not buying new equipment to do this, and that serves a couple purposes. As we had talked before about efficiencies, when we get through this rate study, or we start the new rate study, we plan on a 7-year trade-in on these trucks, and as we hang on to these trucks a little bit longer because we're not running them as hard, and we feel that we can extend their life, we may be able to see how far we can extend the entire fleet in this new rate study. Instead of doing it every 7 years, we might get 8 or 9 years out of one. And the way to find that out for us is to go ahead and have a system in place that we can practice this, try this. What's the real cost of keeping one of these side loaders another 2 years? And we believe that this yard waste program is a good opportunity for us to try that and get some real practical experience on what that costs.
You dropped I think your your professional services dropped by $10,000.
Yes.
What are we not buying or?
That is for the water monitoring agreement for Pocatello Creek landfill. Is not due next year, but it is due in 2018's budget. So that's what that is. We are not required to do the monitoring service next year. It's every other year, and we just did it this year.
So 2018, we'll see that increase.
Yes, yes.
Okay, thank you, Arlen.
Okay, and then you can see overall interfund charges are a decrease of about 13,000, and I've listed all the interfund charges here for you. That's the fuel, that's where your biggest decrease is. Your insurance was actually a decrease. Administrative support, an increase. Utility billing, an increase. And right-of-way maintenance, a slight increase. And Public Works Director was a larger increase. And this mostly had to do with the fact that we moved the admin support position out of engineering and into the Public Works Fund. So that kind of gives you some detail as to what's happening within the interfund charges. Revenues, when we look at revenues, they're programmed, sanitation's programmed for a 3% increase, and Arlen has programmed that within his charges here. What you see on this one where it shows a 6%, that's partly from the demand of the rentals. So you're seeing both demand and the increase in rates. And then overall, he's programmed to build a little bit of cash reserves by $245,000 if everything holds steady to the plan.
Or as we like to call it, the bank.
The bank. Well, yes.
But I think it's important that we point out that 262 is a loan payment.
Oh, yes.
That is not based on fees. That's a loan repayment for South Valley.
Well, other financing sources
Okay,
is the repayment of the South Valley. I have one budget amendment program to do an additional payment or partial additional payment this year. And so what that will mean if we approve that is that we will have 7 more payments, including starting in fiscal year 17. We'll have 7 payments, and then South Valley Road will be paid in full at that point.
Any questions for?
No? Good job.
Okay, sounds
Thank
great.
you, Arlen.
Thank you.
Doing a great job out there, by the way. It's
Thank you.
nice to see them, and we get a lot of compliments on your employees, so.
Thank you. We appreciate it. I will let the crews know, and they like to hear that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I guess I didn't go over the one.
Thank you.
Let's just
Okay.
call it good.
So
Looks like we're up to water is next.
Yes, Water Department is next.
Joyce, one of the things that we're going to want to talk about, and I think now it's within Public Works, is that the reason why his went up is that he wasn't added into fiscal year 16. His fund wasn't added
Right.
into fiscal year
Oh.
16. So that's, I mean,
Well, we
we can
can- we
capture
can-
that on Public Works. I got to know.
Yeah. Yeah, we can address it then. Okay.
We're good?
Yep, thank you, Arlen.
No, you got to stick to it.
Next, we have Justin.
Good morning.
Morning. Morning, Justin.
See if I can shrink this down. Hang on just a second so you can see all the picture. It's not quite what I want. Okay. So in the water fund, overall wages, and it's mostly in the medical benefits, increased by $42,961. You can see 28,000 of it was the medical benefits side. So you have normal step moves, you have longevity, and then you have changes within medical. Then we look at what I call his operating lines in this. It's in this section right here. Overall, it's a decrease of $1,619,451. I think the big attack there is on the capital outlay side, and I'll let Justin explain that to you. It's right here.
Assuming that's
Yeah, so the
building.
largest reduction there is due to the one-time project out at the airport with the tank and booster and well project. So, yeah, that was utilizing some of the reserves that we had built up within our existing rates. Now we're in a year of rebuilding some of those reserves.
So does that get your capital line item more back in line with it's been previously over the last 5 years, maybe?
Yes and no. There's still some large projects out there. As far as our mainline replacement projects, we're currently in the process of a new facility plan, and there's some much needed improvements to some of our existing booster stations to just provide for some better resiliency on those and dependability.
Do you have a time frame, like so many miles or feet of that mainline replacement each year?
Yeah, our target each year is roughly 1.5 miles to 2 miles per year that we replace. And it's all dependent on kind of our short schedule of construction. Usually we start up in March and run till about the end of November through our construction months. And usually we're able to get pretty close to that with both our projects as well as contracting a few replacement projects as well.
Do you want to go over these, like the big decrease in?
Could we address your professional service?
Yeah, I was just gonna-
And again, Justin, that you just get lucky second, my brain's starting to turn on here. Because I want to make sure that,
We put him second because usually your brain turns on first and slows down. a
it's after
second.
holiday weekend.
Oh, okay, all right.
It's only Tuesday.
That's right.
So please address the professional services, okay? And again, the reason I'm saying that is because we want to make sure we get enough of what we need, absolutely need, okay? I'll save my question for whoever's next, so just address the professional services.
Yeah, so currently we'll be finishing up the last bit of our facility plan, and that's an estimate as far as an overlap of how much our consultant will have remaining in his contract to finish up that facility plan for us. Other than that, we're discontinuing our on-call services agreement for engineering services. We've now hired a staff engineer to work for us, so we've been able to reduce that and do more in-house.
Okay, good, thank you.
In the revenue section, you can see he's programmed for a 4% increase. And that's what the rate study has dictated to us. I guess we didn't go over the interfund. The overall interfund charges up here are $176,000. We can have these broken out in sections because of his divisions. You can see in the main division, or his administrative division, that's where we have the insurance. That was an increase of about $63,000. In the transmission division, we had a decrease in fuel, utility billing support increase, public works a slight increase, IT support a decrease, insurance on this one is a decrease, which almost nets itself out, and then your right-of-way maintenance. Then in the purification section, we don't have the interfund transfers, so that would be it. And so that's what's accounting for that $176,000.
Yeah, it's all under admin.
Yeah, mostly under admin. And then just some movements around, Anyway, so that kind of gives you an idea. Yeah, I know you've been concerned about the admin support, so we're just trying to make sure you understand where things are heading there. But once again, the revenue side, it's a programmed 4% increase for the revenues for this year. And overall, he's expected to rebuild reserves to almost $1 million, which is what would be appropriate after expending the reserves down as he has.
Exactly, but that's one of the reasons we have problems in the general fund.
Okay.
Is there any other questions on?
Questions for Justin?
Good job.
Council?
Thanks, Justin.
Okay.
Thanks, Justin.
Nice job, Justin. Thank you. We will move on then to water pollution.
Mayor and Council, John Harry. Nice to visit with you again.
I'll bet you're thrilled.
Sure, I bet he's thrilled.
I'm actually on vacation, so this is free.
True.
So you're really thrilled.
Yeah, really thrilled.
Okay, hang on, let me get the zoom on this right. Okay. So in water pollution control, the wages overall have changed. It's an overall decrease of $14,000. Most of this one is in the personnel wages, so it tells me we've had turnover in his fund, and so we have brand new people coming in who are at lower steps. That you'll see this increase over the time, over the next 5 years. But that is a normal response to changing personnel, retirements and such.
Yeah, we have a person retiring in 14 days, I guess. He's been there for 33 years, I believe.
So just clarification, because I think we had 2 retirements yesterday, is that what my understanding?
Yes, we did.
And then another 14 days on those.
Yeah, and we have a couple, there are quite a few unplanned. When you see the budget amendments next week in the study session, you're going to see some firefighters that were unplanned retirements too coming through, so we...
They're all going to the promised land.
So anyway, then when we start to look here at the Water Pollution Control Fund, we're looking at the operating lines, which is this section right here. Overall, it's about $105,000 increase. And we will go over those details down below here. As to what caused the increase in the operating side.
Yeah, most of it is, we're going from chlorine and sulfur dioxide to UV, so we're not going to have the chemical, but we are going to have certain chemicals. We're going to use some alum, but we're getting rid of the chlorine and sulfur dioxide. But the electricity will increase with the UV system, and then we have some other gas and oil. We just did a little deduct on that. We're replacing 2 vehicles at $30,000 each instead of 1 at $120,000. And then the other item is...
Well, you have a pretty big reduction in your capital.
Right. Last year, we bought a big service vehicle and a new high-pressure jet truck, and this year, in 17, we're budgeting for a new camera van.
But then
You
down
got a jet
below,
truck working around town that doesn't have city markings on it. Is that your truck or is that an independent truck?
I believe all ours have city emblems on them.
I think that's an independent truck.
Yeah.
and then you're purchasing the biosolids truck and the trailer.
Yes, we are. We're replacing a biosolids truck and trailer that is about a 97 model.
What does that do, John?
That is how we reuse our residuals from the wastewater treatment process.
Take it out.
They go out to the land that's adjacent to the airport,
Yeah.
and we
Spread it.
we spread it out there.
Okay, I'm sorry. I should have thought.
We can get real graphic.
So, and then
I didn't want too graphic.
and then on the revenue side, we're programmed here for 3% for inflation, and the remainder of that increase is related to increased demand. Let's see, what else do I want? The interfund charges overall are an increase at $279,000. Let's go down into that section. Starts right here with Public Works, right-of-way maintenance, debt service went down by a little, GIS and environmental science, utility billing services, the largest being administrative support, insurance. And the thing to remember about this fund, as well as water, has some complexity to it because not only are you operating the base fund, you have debt service, you have two major loans that you're processing here, which equates to about $3 million in debt service payments a year. And then if you go over to WPC Construction, we're operating a $12 million project. That's the remainder part. At this time, it started out at $23 million. And so there's a lot of activity that is happening in relation to water pollution control. When we go to their rate study plan, the big things this year are completion of the phosphorus project, which is that $12 million that I just pointed out to you, replacement of capital equipment, the biosolids truck and trailer, the camera van, 2 vehicles, and then his repair, maintenance, and replacement of infrastructure, which is the cure-in-place pipe for 2 miles, and the lift stations Raymond and Indian Hills. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
And so those are the major items that this rate study is trying to complete in this given year.
Pardon?
I just said that this is what we're trying to accomplish in this year.
Yes.
For the rate study. Is there anything else that you want to add, John?
Nothing unless you have
John,
questions.
could you give us just a quick overview of how the project's coming along?
Project is coming along pretty well. We have the UV facility pretty much done. It's in operation. The chlorine facility has been demolished. The chlorine basins have been demolished, and they're actually working on pouring concrete for the extended east section of the filtration building. They've got some mixed liquor pump station that they're working on, and they're doing some gates and valves in some of the other basins, and it's looking really good.
So in your opinion, you're pretty happy with the progress?
With the construction work, I'm pretty happy with you.
Just comment one more thing. I think overall, this budget is planning to, by just a small amount, increase reserves, which is kind of important for this fund because in order to start the phosphorus project, they spent a lot of their reserves.
Yeah.
And so this is a fund that is really needing to kind of rebuild those reserves.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's kind of the point of that one. Okay?
Just make sure Washington doesn't issue any more unfunded mandates.
Yeah, take charge of that, John.
Michael.
Well, that's Mike's job. You're on vacation, Mike.
As soon as John's off vacation, he's got to get on Washington. Right now, Mike, it's you.
You're writing those letters in your free time.
Sounds great, thank you.
Thank you.
Joyce, in between people, will we come under any criticism for having nearly $1 million in reserve in the other fund that we just were talking about that Justin has?
Oh,
900.
Justin? Well, remember, that fund also has bond money. And when I go over the reserves, reserve report next week, I'm going to explain to you, even though you may have, by appearances, when you look at all the funds that the water has, there's some amounts that are sitting there that that are supposed to be used only for the purchase of water rights. You've got that section. And then you have another section where you have to have operating maintenance reserves, that 3-month or 25% that I've been talking about. That's kind of programmed within the rate study. And then you have a section called capital, and there's an amount that they need to have in reserves in case of an unexpected catastrophic event within their capital structure. Because our ability to go out and borrow and get money is a little difficult. And so your rate study has to kind of build in order to keep continuity and operating, because this is one fund that you would not be able to stop. You have to have those reserves in place so that you can take care of any event that might be unknown in the future. And so it's just prudent management of if you were a business, a private business, you would have to do the same as far as having reserves on hand in order to handle any situation that might be an unplanned event, shall we say.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to science and environment. I don't see Hannah out here.
No, I think Mike is presenting for Hannah. She's not here today.
Right, that's correct. Hannah is on vacation, and I'm here to answer questions for that.
Oh, good.
Okay.
What's that?
I said good.
This is Stump, the Public Works Director, time. So.
Okay, in the wage lines, you're going to see a big decrease, and that's because she had a position that was sitting out there that was never filled. And so we kind of addressed that question and said, and she was usually using those funds for hiring professional services, and so that's why the flip between the 37 decrease here and the 25 increase. No, that's for...
Yeah, because that's just supplies.
That's for a vehicle, actually. So she moved it to the lines that she considered to be the critical need. And so we're kind of reporting a little bit better on her budget as to what the actual need is versus where it was sitting prior. So that's the reason why for that change. Then in the operating lines, she's increased by $24,000. If you go down here, you can see where that's happening. She's increased her office supplies, educational materials, printing and publication info pamphlets, and then a light vehicle is what she's requesting. And those are really where the increases are coming from. And the other important thing to remember about this particular fund, it is funded by outside revenue sources, your city of Chubbuck, Bannock County, Idaho State University, and then, of course, interfund transfers from water and water pollution control.
But do we have a good system in place to track that those other agencies are paying the appropriate amounts?
We're monitoring it some in our office, and of course, Hannah does the monitoring and the billing on that.
This is for Joyce. I see that what we've done is on the, I'm seeing a trend that we've increased interfund charges somewhat across the board on these departments.
Well, these departments, when we have, if we move steps, if medical goes up, these departments don't have the ability to, well, if we reduce, we have to reduce their function. And these particular ones, on the internal service, what I call more of an internal service fund, their only ability is either they reduce their service, okay, But in this particular case, their service is for fee-oriented functions, and so the permitting process for the, the NPDES stormwater permit. So if we go to decrease that, her ability to complete her requirements in relation to John out at Water Pollution Control becomes kind of a critical factor. And so it's kind of like you're not wanting to touch your utilities, but this one is kind of an extension of the utilities because her purpose and function is part of that to meet the needs and demands of the other utility funds.
Right, but on our water pollution, we increased interfund charges by $279,000.
Oh, but now that's a different.
So my question is I'm assuming that's money that's going to go back into the general fund somewhere to be used somewhere.
For the most part.
Okay, so what I'd like to know, possibly next week or something, is what's a dollar figure that has been reallocated by adjustment of inter-fund charges across all departments?
I mean, it was the one thing that I did before you made the decision to do this big change with admin support, bringing mayor and council and legal into that administrative support transfer. I believe we were out about 1.4, and what these movements did with these fee-oriented funds is it freed up about $600,000. So we're gaining about $600,000, making the utilities pay for things that they should be paying for, because they definitely utilize our legal department. They definitely utilize mayor and council. And so all we're doing is actually making them pay for things they've not been paying for in the past. Or they paid for it via a transfer that wasn't tagged specifically to a purpose, okay? And so what we're doing is just trying to make that right again.
Yeah. Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I thought you were referring to the revenue side, because this fund is it's a combination.
Right.
Fee, just outside fee and
brain's late.
In internal. Sorry. Right, transparency. Let's see, let's go to her PowerPoint. On science and environment, remember she is responsible for assisting with the NPDES stormwater permit compliance annually. That includes mapping and modeling of the stormwater system, inspections and enforcement, education and outreach, which is the environmental fair, demonstration projects, that's the MLK project that they did this year. And so that's kind of what Hannah does for science and environment. And so that's what her funds come in for. This is what she's trying to accomplish with it. Do you have anything to add, Mike?
The one big question that I had for Hannah is explain to me a little bit more about the education and outreach on there. And one of the aspects is the environmental fair, but one of the other huge aspects right now is helping understand how our levee system and our river works for our community. And that's part and parcel within the NPDES permit, stormwater permit, and NPDES stands for National Pollution Discharge Elimination System. And so knowing that everything drains from stormwater that's created throughout the city, drains into the river, this is a large aspect of what she looks at. One of the more notable things that we've been working on within science and environment and within public works, and really all branches of public works, is the Portneuf River visioning effort or the plan, and that is sponsored by the city and is paid for by Army Corps of Engineers. And the basis of that is our contribution to that is to have a visioning committee, which of course is Hannah, myself, planning people, and also our city engineer, Deirdre, and our parks director as well is on that committee. And then as well as a 24-member community committee, each one of us serves on that. And then we reach out to the community, different stockholders and interested groups to be on that to help have a vision for the Portneuf River in the future. And you may have seen a lot of that. Different things have happened with respect to that. Is the surveys and the publicity and the outreach that Hannah has done. I think she completed 18 different pieces of outreach in a couple months period of time promoting this study on the Portneuf River. And from that, we've been able to work with Army Corps, and they are looking at, first reassessing the purpose of the concrete channel, first looking at its capacity, and we've talked a bunch about that. And then secondly, the second part of it is to, I should say reassessment and repurposing. The repurposing part of it is to add another purpose of the channel. The first purpose is flood control, of course. The second purpose is being determined by this planning study that we have, this concept or the master plan that we're putting together. The next step after that the Army Corps is looking to help us out with is a feasibility study. And it's trying to understand the feasibility for each one of the projects that we're identifying through the community, and then helping us find funding sources so that we're able to put the projects into place for with respect to the channel. Now, that's not going to happen overnight, and so this effort, and my point being, is getting back to the education and outreach. Just the Portneuf River, looking at it from the stormwater, and then also the stormwater permitting, and then the master planning, consumes a tremendous amount of her time trying to understand how that system works, that Portneuf River earthen levee and concrete channel system works throughout the city, and what it's going to look like in a 20-year period of time.
You used the phrase Army Corps funding. Do we actually get money from them?
Well, what they are supplying right now is they are supplying the labor, the equipment, and the composition of the master plan. They are writing that document for us. We are supplying input and direction from the community members, as well as the focus group, and then the community focus group. Here just recently, within the last couple months, there was an internet survey, an online survey, and it's typically expected that 1% of the population would fill out that survey, which in our case would be about 550 people. We actually had just under 1,000 people fill that out, which showed the Army Corps that this community is committed and this community is interested in knowing how, or master planning in concept, how the river could look sometime in the future. And so the next steps after that, the Army Corps would be participating in those, in the feasibility study, the reassessment, the repurposing, and then help us establish where funding could come from. A lot of this is something that's going to happen in the future, and they want to be very careful at what they present to what they can fund sometime in the future, not knowing exactly what the direction is of the federal government and the people that react to their needs and the availability of federal funds.
Okay. So in essence, what we're doing is we're developing a proposal that somewhere, someday, we hope will get funded, because it will change over time as to the sources and the players. We're trying to develop hopefully a slam dunk type of proposal that anybody could get on board and see the merit of the proposal.
Well, that's a good way of putting it, is a proposal of what could happen in the future. The fact is that the concrete channel is about 60 years old. The useful life is as long as the concrete holds up, right? And so at some point, that concrete is going to crumble and fall apart. And this document is going to help future planners and future funders and future people to restore the concrete channel something different than what is currently being used for now. So proposal, yes, this is what people want today. How we're going to pay for it is something we want to plan for, and what it will look like is, or when is it going to look like this, I guess is the bigger question, is when the concrete channel fails.
And so in essence, what we're doing is doing an evaluation of what has happened in the past and saying that we believe there's some inadequacies in just putting the channel in the way it was.
That's correct.
It fulfilled the function of flood control, but it didn't fulfill many aspects of building a community around a river.
Right, and there's a lot of communities that have been reassessed and repurposed, that are examples, throughout the nation and also internationally, that the Army Corps has participated in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. This is something that they've recognized, that when this channel was originally put in, it was put in for one purpose, and that was flood control. And what we're wanting to do is change that purpose to flood control is obviously the first thing we want to maintain, but secondly is community involvement, and whether that's recreation, whether that's the community being able to recreate within the water, or canoe trails is some of the things that we're looking at, or kayak parks is another thing that we're kind of looking at, or just being able to have the community get closer to the channel without having to take, a 20-foot jump to get into the channel as it is now.
Well, one of the key issues will be whether we eventually get more water in the river so that it can be perceived as a more dependable resource to the community. Because when it dries up, then all it really goes back to flood control, not a dual purpose. And so if we can get more water rights that keeps more water in the river, then we kind of develop the multi-purpose that will leverage us.
That's correct. I mean, that is something that we're trying to tackle on a concept basis, is what that looks like when there is no water in it. Do people really want to go into a concrete channel?
Yeah.
And a lot of it depends on the geometry of that channel. Instead of being 16 feet wide, we might have a smaller channel in the middle that might only be 4 feet wide, and we would still have a little bit of running water in there, and it would be a lot more appealing than to look down at the bottom of the channel today, or not today, but when we get into low water season and seeing just a gray slab of concrete.
Okay. Any other questions? No. Okay, thank you. We'll move on then to
Public Works.
Public Works.
And Public Works is Mike Jaglowski. So I guess we'll start with the wages. You'll see a big increase in wages in all three of the lines. That is because we moved the position, the admin support position, from engineering into Public Works. And that's basically what that position is. You do have some step moves, and of course the changes in medical, that would have been included in that, so it's not all just that position. Then in the operating lines, which are this section right here, you have an overall increase of $5,097. Let's see here. Basically, the increases here are in your professional services and purchase services line. These are related to travel items for Mike's attendance to attend with the other departments, the conferences he deems to be critical for his function. Initially, those were not being budgeted within this fund. They were being paid for directly out of the other funds, and we're just correcting this for transparency.
And that's coming out of professional services?
Well, it comes out of, that's your registration fees, is professional.
Part of it is registration. The other part of it is the position that we, or the position that we pay for on the federal government side.
So what is the Public Works Director's travel budget, or?
Well, Councilman, Joyce and I talked about.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
Joyce and I talked about the difference in that is that there's a change in philosophy. The philosophy is that the Public Works Director Fund 054, would pay for travel, registration, and expenses for conferences, expos, and training that would benefit all the departments all at one time, such as AIC and APWA, which is the American Public Works Association, on the national level. the philosophy has changed that, the historical philosophy or the philosophy before was that any conferences, expos, and training that was deemed for one or two departments specifically, like a solid waste expo or a compost expo and training, or asphalt or water, specific type of training would be paid by those departments. And so through our conversation over the last month or so, we found that it would be more transparent, that if someone else was to look into this budget, they would readily see that the Public Works Director attended AIC, attended the APWA conference, plus in this case, or this year, fiscal year 16, the Solid Waste Conference, and then also the Fleet Conference that I went to.
And remember, within this fund this is where we pay for our lobby. I think that's what he was
That's what I
referring
was
to.
trying, I couldn't find the word. So I'm glad that you did.
so 64,000 of this number, the 68,000, 64 of it is for that cost to pay for our lobbyist in Washington. And so the remaining $4,800 is really travel, or the registration.
Whenever we do a move like you're talking about, I mean, I'm not opposed to that, but it would be nice if there was a spot on there that it said, we took $4,000 from these other budgets and moved it into here.
Well, that's done in your interfund charge there, Gary.
Yeah,
You see that coming around.
Yeah, I mean, it translates in that it goes up over here, so they have to come down on the other side. The only reason for doing that is if there was ever a data request, you think about data requests that could come in. If somebody wanted to know what did the Public Works Director travel, if those are over in other funds, it's really difficult to go and figure out where those expenditures are. And so it is much cleaner, and that's the reason why he's a separate fund by himself, to have these things and be in the one fund. And so that's the reasoning behind it.
Okay, let me go back to my original question.
Sure. What was the original?
My original question was, how much are we spending on travel and conferences, okay? Do you know how much your travel budget is?
I know what it is for 2017.
Okay.
And I know what it is for 2016.
What's that?
I couldn't tell you right off.
Okay, I'd like to know. Not today, but I
Okay,
want to know
okay.
because
We can.
I had a travel budget.
You know what, I do.
And I know exactly what I could spend
Well, and I think most of our other departments, we do have travel.
Yeah, so I'd like to know that number.
Well,
Actually, Councilman, I did bring my budget.
yeah,
on here,
you should be able to tell within the details.
I
Is that
mean,
after we made the move? Joe?
we saw it on the firemen. They saw what they have for training and stuff. I'd just like to see what we're, and then, you know,
You give me a second, we can
I
tell you more.
tell you, I don't really need it right now.
Okay, that's fine. I'll get it for you
There's two
then.
things I've asked for, and that's this total interfund change.
Just for this fund.
And then what are we spending on travel for? And I don't care if it's for all the other utility fees, but I want to see what we're spending for travel, because Mike said, our Public Works Director said that they'd moved the solid waste budget or conference into that, the Public Works Director Conference, the AIC, so.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Is there a
I think
reason there's not a travel and meals line item in this budget?
Well, it is within,
It kind of gets
the
lumped in.
the registration line is element object is 4012. Well, 4012, all 40s are called professional services. So it's lumped into this one, okay? When you get down into this purchase services line, that's where you get into what we call the travel line, which is 6301. And so there could be other things in there. I don't want to say it's all 8,571, but that would be, that could be a misstatement. And so I think we need to look at the detail and get back to you on that. But
Because I think the mayor's.
they are separate lines,
Mayor's
so.
office is probably $6,000 for travel or something. I mean, you know what I'm saying, as I recall.
Well, What you pay for up here in professional services is the registration fee, whatever the conference costs for you to attend.
Right.
When you're down in the purchase services lines, you're into what did my plane cost, what did my hotel cost, what did my per diem cost, that's where those are reported, okay? And so those tend to be a little larger than your registration
Okay.
fees for the most
I'm
part.
moving on, because basically what you're saying now is that the interfund revenues are increasing by $77,447,000. Your increased cost of the Public Works Director's budget was $77,937.
Well, it increased, but remember, you had a position come in here.
Okay.
And that's about 60-something.
But what it looks like is the interfund charges are paying for a position that moved from engineering to Public Works.
Right.
So does that position that moved from engineering to Public Works, does it benefit the utility
Yes,
groups?
because in essence, it was working over here in engineering, but because Mike does not have an administrative support person under him, that person was doing the functions of assisting him, which then in essence assists
Assisting the others.
the others.
Okay.
And so, and because when you look at this interfund charge, who pays for that? It's engineering, street, sanitation, water, sewer, environmental science. So all 6 of those departments go in to making the payment of the $301,000 here. And so in essence, even though we pulled that position out, engineering's still having to pay for some of that position, which is probably more appropriate. And the utilities are having to pay for some, which is definitely appropriate because they were getting the services for it. And so it's just a different way of looking at it. We kind of left it lumped over here. Had we allowed him to hire an additional person, then this logic wouldn't have been very good, right? But because we didn't, this makes sense to
Right,
to
but
move
this is where it
the
gets confusing for sort of simple-minded individual like myself, is because now what we're seeing is we increased interfund charges. Those interfund charges went into a fund, and they went out to another fund. In this case,
Yes.
they're going out to Public Works.
And public, remember the type of fund we're talking about here. Public Works is an internal service fund. Its sole purpose sits to assist these other funds in their functions.
Okay?
And so that's the reason why.
But there's $68,000 now that, by note 1, is moved out of engineering.
Well, I wouldn't say 68,000 because there's still step moves in this fund that has nothing to do with that position that moved in.
Okay, so 55,000.
Yeah, but I
Okay, but see, the
saying-
problem is, when we get to engineering, okay, which may not be today,
We already did engineering, so,
okay, but see, I can't remember, was engineering down $55,000?
you know what?
That's correct.
I can
That's-
tell you what they were down, but I can't remember.
That's where it gets lost because of the process?
And I guess that's why I'm kind of what I've been trying to do this year is to clean things up, to make it be
Right.
people paying for what they should be paying for, so that we're really transparent in
Okay.
what the costs
And
are
that's-
for these functions.
And I'm not trying to, I'm trying to get a handle on this because it is large.
Oh,
It's
it is.
huge. And so here you're showing me that engineering's down $2,000 over the year. It's down 26 there.
26,000.
But with step moves and everything, so I'm saying this, I'm trying to grasp it because with step moves and everything, there was a $40,000 difference in that number there.
There was a reevaluation of at least one position and, retirements. Wasn't there retirement in here or two?
Well, there's.
So that's part of
there's
it.
three
Now-
retirements that are planned for 2017 in engineering.
And to all of you here
But
sitting...
you're counting Dennis's, and that's in a different division.
Yeah, you're right.
But for you sitting here, we appreciate, and I appreciate what you do. But do you see how it looks
No.
like it's
Well,
almost a shell game, because this was last week and this is here, and it's really tough to grasp all of it.
well, no,
Well,
and
Council,
I,
let me jump in here
Yeah.
real quick. Councilman, when we talked about engineering, we said exactly this. Our goal is this budget in engineering reflects the movement of the existing admin assistant in engineering to Public Works to serve not only in engineering, but also all the other departments within Public Works and myself. And reason why we're doing that is that right now, that person is working in that capacity. And with the effort to try to make things as transparent as possible, and the way Joyce explained it, I thought was a really good way, is that if someone asks a question, what this person does, and we're able to defend it. We're saying, okay, this person's within Public Works. Public Works' mission is to work with all 6 Public Works departments and to coordinate and to make things work the very best we can, and that person is aiding in that currently now. And so that's what we're trying to do. So when we reported on engineering a couple weeks ago, the same note was down there, is that this position is moving from engineering to Public Works, partially, I shouldn't say partially, but to be paid by all 6 Public Works departments. Last year in this current year in 2016, and also in 2015 and 2014, the sanitation department was removed from contributing their fair share of funds into Public Works. And when we had our budget reconstruction meeting in October, it was explained that in 2017, fiscal year 2017, sanitation would pay their fair share of and contribute into the Public Works Department fund. When that happened, it freed up, or it gave opportunity for extra money coming into Public Works to where we would be able to make that movement from engineering into Public Works. And I think that amount was about $38,000 that sanitation was going to pay for or transfer into Public Works, because they just hadn't been in Public Works the last 3 years. There was a decision made and thoughts and things happened in the past. We're trying to bring all the departments within Public Works to pay for Public Works. With that extra money in there from sanitation, we had the opportunity of being able to move the admin support into Public Works, which is operating within that capacity now.
Okay, and we get all that. I think.
Yeah, we understand.
I think we get all that. I think the problem, and I agree with Mike, is
It's complex.
Well, it's money.
What we're saying is we want to be more transparent, but yet we don't get it.
I know.
I mean, I'm not saying we can't get it. I'm saying it's got to be simpler. So, for example, this particular issue, we move this person over there. That means we're taking, there ought to be a note somewhere that says we're taking $50,000 more from the utilities that's going in here, and that's reducing what we're taking in taxes, $50,000 on the other end. We can't see that. I mean, it may be there.
Well, you can't see it because of the variables that we just talked about. Because if I just look at the wage lines and I've got 2 retirements in there, I'm going to absorb that 50,000 savings because now I have an additional wage expense that I wasn't planning on. So
But let's just take
there's
wage
so
to-
many moving parts.
Well,
Right,
and that's
but
true,
wage
but
to
there's so
wage.
many moving parts that we can't keep track
Yeah, I
of.
know.
Okay, wage to wage, engineering took 26,000 decrease, okay?
Yeah.
Public Works took a $68,000 increase, and all we did is move one person.
But
and-
that isn't the only thing you're doing.
Well, you're doing step increases.
No,
I understand.
and-
You're doing a reevaluation of a position, so we're paying somebody some more money.
So,
Let me see. if I
Yeah,
can
26,000 came out of engineering.
Well,
No.
But what we're doing here is we're getting a summary of a lot of transactions.
Yes.
And when we get a summary, we're not going to get the detail of where something came from here, where something came from here. And so we're getting the summary of all these things in these reports. We have to have some faith in our accounting that they can go and they can give us the trail that we can follow, that we can get to each one of those destinations if we want to. What we're receiving from them today is the summary of all this.
That's correct.
And we're getting, I think, a little bit distracted by the details.
Well, then, Roger, if you're confident with everything, then we'll just move on.
Well, I'm just saying
Well,
that,
You know,
Absolutely.
let's take.
that's what we're, let's,
I think that what Roger is saying is correct in that you're seeing the collapse impact of all these decisions that are being made in this budget for the year. So when I look at engineering here, who went down by 26,000, I know that I have an unplanned or planned retirements that are unusual. It's a one-time shot, and it totals $26,000. So if I didn't have these retirements in here, I would be $26,000 plus $26,000. You would be seeing an overall decrease in this division by $52,000. But you don't see it because of just what he said, is that there's more things happening. And so when we look at this picture, we're looking at it after the fact and at the end of all decisions being made in regards to medical going up, step moves being made, longevity going up, retirements coming through. And so it's hard to see just that one defining moment of moving the people from one place to the other. I mean, I'm more than happy to go through any of those details, but I have to work back through it myself because it is complex and it is detailed. I don't know how else to say it. I mean, just the moves that we made to move admin around and to do the things that we did with admin and to move zoo to the recreation fund was a lot of accounting work to do that and to make the numbers move. It wasn't simple. I will say that. I think Ashley would account for the fact there was a lot of keying entries that we had to do in order to make these moves happen. I wished I could keep it segregated so that you could see each move individually, but it's really...
The only way we could do it is to take last year's budget, that big orange book right there. And
No, this is this year's.
Or that's this year?
Or 2016's.
We're talking 2017, so that's why. And lay them side by side, and we could then see line item by line item
But
differentiation.
Well, you would see different, well, and that's what you're seeing here, because when we look at this number, that's 2016's. This is 2017.
That's a summary. I'm saying that we could see
Oh, yeah,
an
if you would-
individual who retired, they go out of service, and we see a replacement that comes back in at a different figure. We could trace all that, but we're getting small sheets rather than books right now.
Yeah, we'd have to have a lot more time to go through each one of those detailed lines.
Well, I remember watching the council that went through it line by line with that, and they got bogged down.
Well, that's why when we met back in February, and you remember I said, I need decisions on these things, because those decisions had big tentacles going out to the things that we had to do in the computer. And so making those decisions meant we were going to make all those moves happen. And yes, it is hard to report on the each individual tentacle and how it hit and how it impacted.
Still, I think when we do something big,
Yeah.
specifically like move this position from one place to another, there needs to be some kind of an attachment somewhere that explains it to a guy like me. And it doesn't have to be super in-depth, but it needs to be, it needs to be a little bit.
So is this-
And it's stuff that everybody should already know. I mean, it's not stuff anybody should have
Well,
to
you can break
research.
it down. You can go into the detail, and I don't have any problem doing that. I didn't realize it was a concern to that level, or I probably would have.
Well, please don't think that we don't think you work, and you are working hard.
Oh, I believe you think I'm working hard. I'm trying to
No, I know you
communicate
are.
this to the point where I can communicate it to you, not lose you in the details, but keep you informed as best I can. And that's really my goal.
Gary, we've got a note down here, move administrative support position to public works from engineering.
Okay, right, and you can see that there's a $77,000 thing covered by interfund charge, okay? But again, what I'm saying is that position came out of engineering, okay? And when you compare the engineering to that, it doesn't appear, because of all the other intricacies,
Well, and if you look down here at the bottom,
then you don't see where the net is, and
we talked
it
about
looks
the
like
fact
it's
that
kind of moving
there's
around in motion.
retirements. This was the movement of the admin support position, and then, of course, this was the operating reductions that they did.
Is this
But-
on engineering?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
But engineering was the one that was taking the hits for the movements. All we did over here when we went over to Public Works was to show you the impact of the position coming in. But I understand the frustration of how much detail that is going in. And we're making lots of changes this year, and I know that it's easy to get. That's why I'm trying to do this kind of step move and make decisions so that I can put that one behind and I can focus on this one. Otherwise, if I try to look at this as what all are we going to do and you just go do it all, you would get lost. I would get lost, and I'm a detail person. So that's the reason for the approach.
And I'd make another observation, Mayor. You know, when we look at our utility departments, we buy into the concept. You know, we hire people to give us a plan, so we keep those departments whole, hopefully. So we're looking at 4% increases to keep those departments whole, to be able to provide those services. We do that. We accept that pretty regularly. We have good people managing those departments. If we don't have to go 4%, we don't. But we generally think that that's accepted practice and that works. Those departments, we really don't approach the tax funds the same way. You know, the legislature has told us that, you know, you really need to take 3% every year in order to keep, you're allowed to do that, and sometimes we don't do that. So an observation is maybe we need to think about tax funds a little more the same way we think about our utility funds to try to keep them whole.
Well, that's the point. Otherwise, if you're not keeping up with inflation and you just keep nibbling away at your operating, your capital, your people, you're eventually going to have an impact on your service at some point. That's just a given. And you have to make the decisions how important. You're the group that gets to decide what is important service-wise, and to what level we're going to have services, right? And those are the factors that come in. We try to do. I mean, I've sat through all these meetings and listened to every department. I know people are working hard. They're trying to do the best they can. We're always looking for ways to be efficient, effective. How can we do it better? But there are a lot of, I look at my department as a whole, and all the rules that keep getting piled on top, all the reporting requirements. They want you to do this. They want you to do that. GASB 68, my goodness, that was enough work this past year. So the time tasking that they're doing to us by these, I would call them unfunded rules, it is time consuming, and so we can't expect to keep doing everything great and better for less. There eventually you will have increased costs. So that's just my thoughts on it. You know.
We got a question here.
One of the things, we'll go with Mike and Gary for a moment here. I'd really like to see the lobbyist as a separate category somehow. I don't want to see it plugged in, because I want to see the lobbyist as a line item that we look at every year in budget development, not just hidden in a services place.
You know what I'll do?
You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah,
it seems to me like we used to do that, and
I don't know if it was.
And I just really do think the lobbyist always needs to have that degree of accountability by looking at that line item every year to see if they're performing for us.
You know what I'm going to do? I'm just kind of populating this in here as kind of a reminder, because I use these sheets as I roll forward to the next year. What I'll do is, even though it's in the 4099 element object, it's very distinguished, and I can yank that detail out if you want to see that piece of detail, and that's not hard.
Well, I think that's a service that really comes to this council more than any place else, and I really think we need to be the ones that are evaluating that service with staff inputs.
This is the fund. Public Works is the one that pays for it. The funding comes from Water and WPC. They're the ones that are funding the lobbyist through transfers, through interfund transfers. I believe it's $64,000, and it was $64,000 last year. So there's no change this year. I can give you that detail. And it's a set amount. We pay, we get a billing every month for 1/12 of the cost, and that's what we pay.
Are we paying expenses on top of that? We used to do that.
I want to say it's 52, around 5,200 a month. I'd have to use my calculator but it's 64,000 divided by 12, and that's what we're paying per month, and that's it.
Okay.
Hey, thanks.
Okay.
Thanks for your patience.
It's no problem. I'm here to answer
going.
whatever questions I can, and if I'm not providing you detail that you are wanting, you just need to let me know. Now, I can't always pull it out of the top of my hat, but I can go back and I can get the details for
Well, and the
you.
lobbyist is a good example. I've supported that in the past, but if we're paying for our lobbyist from water and sewer treatment funds, then we probably ought to sit down at some point in time with our water department and our sewer department leaders and have a discussion about what has that lobbyist accomplished for those two departments over the last 5 years. And if our lobbyist, if there's not some tangible thing, then we probably should look at getting the money from somewhere else or not having a lobbyist. You see what I'm saying?
No, I agree. It could be initially when this item was set up, those were the two funds that
had some money.
Well, okay.
Well, that may have been what they were working, he was working on more.
But those two funds were maybe receiving the, shall we say, the lump of the benefits from it. Things can change from year to year, and we should be evaluating that. I think that's what you're saying.
It is, and I think we should get input from those department heads who are managing those budgets. And if the reality is that a lobbyist isn't producing anything for those two utility companies that we have, then we need to determine, we're going to keep our lobbyists, but we're going to pay for them out of tax dollars or something else.
Well, and it could be one of those things where you're evaluating last year's production and making the next year's pay for that production. In other words, you're always a year in the rears, as far as who's going to pay and how they're going to pay. But there are methods to that, and you're right. I think that evaluating that's probably an important thing.
Well, and there's been a change in terms of allocations, the way they flow out of Washington, and so the role of a lobbyist may have changed, and the way some of those funds now come to the state, it might be more productive to have a state lobbyist than a
federal
Washington.
one?
Yeah, because the way funding structures have changed, their earmarks aren't happening in Washington, they're happening at some state levels in terms of allocations. They're not called earmarks, but it's allocations, direct allocations of a big budget item that comes from the federal government. So it might behoove us to do some real digging into this and see what goes on there.
All sounds appropriate to me from my angle.
We must have got up on the wrong side of the bed this morning. What do you think, Mayor?
No, I think it's good. I think good so far. Okay.
So is that...
Any other questions for Mike?
No, you survived.
Survived it, okay. Thank you very much. We'll move on then to utility billing.
She's probably thrilled to get up here after listening to us so far.
We got him primed for you, Cindy.
And I'll just say thank you and get up and go, right?
I'm going to just check the view on this to make sure I'm where I want to be. Okay. So we have Cindy Robbins here from Utility Billing, and I'll go ahead and get started with the wage part of this. You can see an overall decrease of $10,727 in the wages, mostly in the medical benefits section, and that just tells me that we had some movements with our people moving from a three-party to a two-party or to a one-party. That's the kind of changes that you would see if those actions were happening. In our operating lines, we're looking at an overall increase of $27,095, and we'll kind of go into that detail down below here. I'll let Cindy guide you on, there's really three areas that create that increase.
Okay, thanks, Joyce. Good morning. Part of that, we have two of our trucks don't have any shells on them, and we realized that was an inventory precaution so that we don't have any theft on those. So part of that, it has about a $3,000 in there for 2 new shells. We did have a stuffing machine. We've had lots of problems over the last years with that. We found out it really doesn't have the capacity for what we're using it for. And so we will be getting a new lease stuffing machine that will handle what we need it to. And that's going to make our maintenance go up about $6,000. The other thing we have is Click2Gov. You'll see we have an $8,000 in there for our upgrade on our online bill pay system. This will help us meet federal regulations regarding the security of credit card use. That is a one-time cost. And then merchant fees is about $11,000. That one's very hard for us because it's a per-use thing. Anytime anybody uses a credit card or electronic, we pay that fee instead of giving it to our customers. That's the thing we want, is electronic payments. It sure helps us with our manual processing of payments. Like I says, that's just a hard one because it's a per-use thing. So, and that pretty much covers our increase there for $27,000. Any questions on those?
Then we're going to look at revenues, and you can see overall on the charges for service, they go down by $27,000, and of course our interfunds are going up. And I'll let Cindy explain to you. It's actually a good news story, so.
While it looks bad, it is good. I touched on this with our department head meeting in November. We start sending out those first month late notices. We have people who are paying more timely, so therefore we're not charging the late fees. And that was direct revenue to our department. And so it's just saying that people are paying more timely and the money's getting to the accounts it needs to get to. So while it looks bad, it's a good thing. And then our interfunds went up a bit to help us recoup those costs for us doing our job so well.
Yes. Well, and remember, utility billing is an internal service fund. They exist solely for the benefit of sanitation, water, and sewer. And so everything they do is to expedite the receipt of the revenue coming in, the billing that goes out, and so Cindy's done a great job in making sure that we get our monies timely. I think that's been a good thing. You know, those first billings going out has made a big impact, and if we're not turning monies over to collection and our the ability for people to pay and stay current and not have their water shut off, those are all good things. We don't let them get too far out of hand before we get them back in. And so I think it really is a good customer service approach that we've taken. I don't really have anything else here.
Any questions for?
No, runs pretty smooth.
Okay.
How are we doing with signing up people for auto pay and all those forward-thinking kind of things? Are we gaining on that?
Yeah, we've gone from about 72% manual. We're getting down to about 68%. So we're moving there. It's still a slow process. Still like to look at getting phone apps for people as reminders and can pay on their phone. I think that would be a lot. The younger generation especially really loves just to pay by their phone. Our Click2Gov online bill pay system, it would be nice to have some other features where they could pay in advance and some things like that, but being able to pay with a credit card now has sure helped that one as well. This upgrade might give us a few more nice features that will enable that, but we're still moving there, and yeah, it's just a slow process. People hate to change sometimes, and so.
Cindy, the way you're utilizing your people and your hours of open and close, is that working pretty good?
It is. A while ago, well, before I was there, the utility billing department didn't open till 9. We started at 8. And we don't have, when you're heavily with customer service, it's very hard to ever have time for training, staff meetings or anything. And so instead of being down 5 hours that we're not available to the public, by this Friday afternoons has really helped us to be able to take a block of time that we can have staff meetings and training. And there's lots of things. We have so many different things that come up in our department that we have to constantly go over. One of our big issues I know we'll be going in a meeting this Friday about is the difference when people have our power of attorneys on accounts versus estate executors. We get a lot of paperwork for that kind of stuff. It's very hard for us. We're not legal, but we get a lot of different scenarios, and it's very hard to keep up with those without the training. We also, if we want to use any of the SunGuard classes, we have to be able to have our full staff attend those. And when you're open to the public like that, it's very hard to be able to take that time. Seems to be working very well. Obviously, we don't shut off on Fridays, and unless we absolutely had to. But we try to do that. We've worked with title companies and the realtors. They email us. We still take emails all afternoon. And so we're able to just read and leave and keep services going on the weekend, so nobody's going without water. So seems to be working a lot better than 1 hour that doesn't give you enough time to get anything accomplished. So thanks for asking.
Are there any other questions?
Thanks.
Thank you,
Okay,
Cindy.
thank you.
Thank you, guys.
We'll move on to information systems.
I have with me Chris Sorensen from the IT department. I guess I'll get started on the wages. The wages are showing an overall increase of $8,800. This is mostly people still moving through steps and your medical increases. In the operating lines, which is this section right here, we have an overall decrease of almost $10,000, $9,886. And I will let Chris discuss what he's done to create the decrease. This was through the reductions.
Yeah, most of the decrease is a result of us just delaying the upgrading of computers and monitors. We find that the rate of computers and things needing to be replaced is slowing down significantly. We don't see enough changes in a system to warrant always upgrading. Monitors, a few years ago we were still using capital rate tube monitors. Flat screen monitors last longer. We're not replacing them near as fast. So we reduced our overall supply lines for replacement of systems primarily. We're also going to see some decreases that aren't showing in this budget because they're still anticipated, but we're anticipating some significant reductions in our SunGuard system. There's some stuff that's coming to end of life that they're no longer supporting, therefore we're no longer paying the maintenance on. So we hope to see those benefits too next year.
And then remember, information systems is an internal service fund, and so it receives all its revenue based on an allocation system that I've had Chris develop based on I don't know the various variables. It's number of computers.
There's about 30 variables, everything from the number of phones to the number of email accounts to the number of PCs, laptops, internet connectivity, and those kind of things.
And so he bills each of the departments. We process that, and that is how he's funded. So he's funded both by tax-supported funds and fee-supported funds.
How many pieces of equipment are we really looking at that you have to maintain or?
It depends what you call a piece of equipment.
Like computers?
Computers and things, I'd have to pull out our annual report, but it's around 600, 700 PCs, 100 laptops.
Nearly one for every employee.
500 phones. Well, several. That includes all of our servers and everything else. So certain items are more than one per person. The phones are right in the 500 ballpark, I think, and then there's a lot of people that have multiple devices. They have either a laptop and a laptop or a tablet and a desktop. So sometimes, while the numbers may look like it's a one-to-one for employees, it really isn't, because obviously sanitation truck drivers and water maintenance guys all don't have PCs or laptops that are assigned to them.
Ready for me?
Okay, sure.
Okay, earlier on, we talked about a time card software program. Where is that in this budget?
It's not currently in here. I guess we were kind of waiting until, I believe it's July, that you're going to be on the study session.
Okay.
We're looking at adding, I can't remember what the bid came through as, but we're going to add the clock tracking mechanism to it.
The overall bid, the original quote that we have right now is roughly $78,000 for the installation of the system, and then about a $12,000 annual maintenance, which actually begins as year zero. While not funded in our budget right now, we do have adequate reserves to fully fund that cost. And some of the money that we're going to save as we reduce SunGuard maintenance fees, that's going to be more than enough to cover the additional maintenance fee on the system. And this will bring in both an automatic timekeeping system for us, as well as a scheduling tool that's specifically designed for public safety, such as fire department and police departments, where they have to maintain their crews with certain skill sets and everything. All that gets plugged in, and when you need to swap out one person shift with another, the system will actually tell you if it meets your requirements and such. We are on schedule to fully brief you all in July on the product. In fact, I have a couple more webinars with the company this afternoon to continue to get a greater understanding of the product that they offer. They are SunGuard's preferred solution. It's a seamless tie with our SunGuard payroll system, so that everything that gets entered into it will flow straight in and out of our SunGuard system. We've done a return on investment initial analysis on it. Depending on the numbers you use and the national statistics you use, it shows an annual savings to us of anywhere from $40,000 to over $300,000 a year.
And where do those savings come from?
They come from everything from reducing the amount of paper that we print out for the time cards, the time spent transferring that data into the system, errors in the system, especially with your hourly workers who just tend to round numbers off. Yep, I came in at 8 o'clock when really they got here at 8:05, and they do that consistently. It starts capturing those issues. It captures your other mistakes and errors in manually entering data.
So the plan is next, at the study session next week, I'm going to be presenting the reserve report, my analysis at the end of, for the end of fiscal year 2015 and where everybody sits. And then from there, I also want to go over the reserve policy that we're trying to adopt. But at that point, you're going to see that the savings that he's talking about, that we'd be able to use that. And when we go into tax solution next week, I'm going to add that line as something to add into his budget to plan to expend reserves for this purchase. And if you're choosing to do that at that time, then we'll add it in. Okay?
It is not an overnight implementation. They estimate anywhere between 9 months and a year to actually fully implement it into a city our size.
Now, Cindy must have mentioned a phone app, possibly paying. Is that something IT could assist or help with? Or?
And we've looked at that, sir, several times. We actually had a company on hook. The company that runs Quicken Books, they backed out of doing that type of support about a month after we started our initial conversations with them. So we're just still in the early stages of evaluating possible systems that might work for that.
Here, I'm going to make a statement here, because this is a department that I really think we've got to really be careful about cutting too significantly. If in fact this time card you say may save $200,000 to $300,000 a year, I think that's money that we may want to look back, because our IT director's made a couple of statements over the last year that have come back to ring true, and I think it had to do with security, not a matter of if, but when. You talked about fiber optics and the need for that in recruiting business. Now, the mayor and I had a meeting with Dr. Corey Scow. He really kind of confirmed what you said. I don't know if you prompted him, but I don't think so, because I don't know if you were aware that we had the meeting.
The good doctor and I haven't talked for a few months. So.
The second thing is I had a conversation with an individual from a major storage and data business, and again, the same thing came up was, okay, if you're going to do this, what's your availability for fiber optics throughout the city of Pocatello, so on and so forth, security. So I really think we really need to be cautious about how we move forward with the budgets for our IT department.
Thank you. And in line with that, fiber is considerably more secure. It's much faster, as you know. It also costs us a little bit more, significantly more in some cases. We are looking at, our next two big projects are to get out to WPC first, because they use data quite extensively out there. The local company here in town that is the primary provider of fiber services now has a truck that they can direct lay conduit and fiber into the ground in one pass. They've given us an initial quote of about $44,000 to get it out to WPC, and then to extend it out to the airport, they estimate another $44,000 to $50,000 to get it back out to the airport. Once it's out of the airport, it not only provides possible service to us, it provides additional service that could then be split off to some of our tenants out there. I went out and did a survey the other day. The only people right now that are using fiber out there, CenturyLink has fiber out there. It's very expensive on a month-to-month basis to use them. The Weather Service has a fiber link through them, as well as 3 other links, so that they have multiple backups and redundancy. Peterson's uses a CenturyLink copper solution out there. Almost everybody else out there is using either a radio link or some other type of a wireless link out there. And several of those, I'm talking to Peterson, I'm sure they would be interested in going to fiber. And the Weather Service, dealing with federal contracts and stuff, that it would take some effort, but I'm sure they would dump CenturyLink in a heartbeat to go with this other company because of the pricing structure.
Well, could we approach that in a city utility fashion, since we would pay to get it out there?
We don't have the manpower, the expertise, or the ability to turn it into a utility here like Ammon has. Ammon's IT workforce that's all they worry about primarily is their fiber system. They've been in the courts, they've been fighting it, they've got issues out there with how they're treating it as a utility. There's numerous cities throughout the United States that treat it as a utility. We have enough fiber here and enough companies that I think if we continue to work with our private providers and provide them the proper incentives, we help them get the fiber in the ground through dig once policies where we drop additional conduit and then give them access to that conduit. I think that's a much better way for us to treat the fiber aspect.
Thanks, Chris.
Other questions for Chris?
Looks great.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
We'll move on then to liability fund.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
With me, I have Lynette Sampson and Kirk Bybee for the liability fund. I'll start it off and then I'll let you go into the detail of the 2,400. So in the personnel, wages, and benefits, we have an overall increase of $724. You can see some slight changes in the medical, but this is mainly, you're looking at a very small department, people-wise, and you're just seeing normal step moves, longevity moves that are occurring in this department, and the changes to the medical. In the professional, or in the operating lines, which is this group here, we only have one real change, and that's in the professional services. And I'll let Kirk or Lynette discuss that with you.
It's our Intermountain Claims contract will be have to be renewed. They haven't taken an increase. This is just an anticipated increase. They haven't said that necessarily will happen, but just in case, it's built in.
Is there a trend of an increase in their services, or?
It's been flat for, well, I've been here almost 2.5 years and it hasn't changed.
I guess throughout the industry, though, not just us, has there been any change that they've done throughout the industry and they've just left us off the list?
We have kind of a unique relationship with Intermountain Claims. They pay we pay them a flat fee, and it doesn't matter how many sewer backup claims we have in a month. We still pay them that same amount of money. So we're not really able to compare apples with apples on this, because it is kind of a unique agreement. And again, the whole reason we do this, we buy insurance, and ordinarily the insurance adjuster is who adjusts claims and manages claims. But the council made a decision a long time ago, and I think it's a pretty good one, that we want a local presence rather than having adjusters out of Boise making calls. Sorry that you have a sewer backup claim. Darn it. What can we do about it? We have Dan Weeks from Intermountain Claims there on the scene within a matter, and he gives us a face and a presence. I think it's a good move.
In the interfund charges, you can see an increase of $28,000. That represents a slight decrease to the IT support, an increase to the ADA labor expense, which is, this money is sent to transit, and then the admin support of $21,000 that increased, and so that accounts for your $28,000. The one thing I wanted to note here, because we're about to go and talk about workman's comp, is, and you'll see this again next week when we talk about the reserve report, the overall reserves for this particular fund at the end of 2015, fiscal year 2015, is $911,664. The required reserves, based on if we adopt this policy, saying I need 25% of what we need. Actually, I think I bumped this one a little bit because their annual insurance payment is about $300,000 every 6 months, and so I felt like, because you have to pay that initially in October, we needed to at least cover that cost. And so the required reserves to get us until people start paying in, because this is an internal service fund, how they receive their funds is on a monthly basis from all departments, is the $312,000, which means they have excess reserves of almost $600,000 in this fund. Now, if you remember, workman's comp, when we went self-insured, how we funded the initial movement from being fully insured to self-insured was we had built up some reserves in this fund and we sent them to workman's comp, and that's how you started the process. At this point, you'll see the budget amendments next week. You're going to see a lot next week. But the budget amendments, I put in a request to move $300,000 from the liability insurance fund to the work comp reserve fund to help get us to that $1.5 million goal. And that will still leave an excess of $300,000 in excess reserves.
So why wouldn't, when we have this opportunity to do that, why wouldn't we move all of that into our workers' comp fund?
We could, or we could reassess next year and say we'll take more. In essence, if workman's comp was in trouble, okay, where would you go to help pay the bill? This would be the fund. You would make a budget amendment and you would move the monies. Do you need to move it all right now to say it belongs over here, or do you want to leave it here? That becomes a choice. And we still have one more opportunity before this year ends to make another movement. I was starting off kind of cautiously saying $300,000 will put us over $1 million in work comp and in their reserves. And so if you want to be more aggressive, we can be more aggressive. I'd have to wait till the second amendment to do more because I've already published. But it was kind of a judgment call on that part. So it's up for options still to do more.
I think if it was a personal thing that I was doing, I would move like the $500,000 just to get us close to trying to get to the end point on that. Which,
well, they need to be within $200,000 of $1.5.
Exactly. And to me, that's how I would do that.
And I think that's an option. We usually do a second set of amendments in the tail end of August, first part of September. And if that's your decision, we'll make that move happen at that time.
Is there a reason why we would keep excess reserves here in this fund?
Well, just like workman's comp has potential claims, this fund has potential claims. The only thing is that their claims have been very small. And so our setup, or our reserve setup for them for claims is very, very small.
But even if we did the $500,000, that would leave $100,000 more than what you have in there is required reserves.
Right.
So we'd be pretty healthy in both of those.
Yeah, and Kirk may want to respond as to what he feels is a threshold, but in this particular fund, I can tell you when I look at the reserves that I have to set up at the end of each fiscal year for the auditor, I have to make a judgment call, and I look at what we've paid out in the past year, and that's what we make the assessment on. It's been in the 50,000 to 60,000 range, and so it's small in comparison. So.
And it would seem we have a lot more exposure in workman's comp.
You do.
know, so anyway, I've said enough about that.
I don't know about you guys, but this feels like a recurring nightmare. All right, let's move up the line. Move up the page there. There's something I want to point out to you. Keep going.
Okay.
All right, see the line 10, purchase services? It's kind of a clunky name for that, but what we're doing is we're buying insurance with that money. The insurances that we pay for amount to about $650,000, and it's not just ICRIP, there are other smaller insurance policies that we carry as well. So that's where this fund has increased from, is that traditionally I have asked for about $100 grand a year. In fact, if you go back on the Wayback Machine, how we funded work comp is that we began about 10 years ago by building this fund about $200,000 a year. Now we're at about $100,000 a year, and frankly, I feel like a jerk on this issue because I've been coming to you guys telling you how poor I am and how my fund isn't doing anything, and I don't have enough money to keep going. And I've got $900,000 in reserves. I had no idea I had that money in reserves. I've been before you, I don't know, 3 or 4 or 5 times in the last 7 months telling you how poor I am, and this, anyway, I'm not happy about that. But the happy news is we have that money. And I think what was going on is I think that, and Joyce can correct me on this, but I think what was going on is when I was building in some excess funds on the line 10 this was to handle contingent claims that we don't have insurance for, those sorts of things. For example, that was the money that was used to pay Mercer. That's where that fund money came from, okay? I was believing that when I didn't use that money on an annual basis, that money was then being transferred into the general fund. And apparently it's been accumulating unbeknownst to me. So here we are. The good news?
Well, just to comment, that wouldn't have been an appropriate move. If you've collected from funds for this purpose, it would have been not appropriate for it to move back into the general fund. You become the owner of those funds, and that's why we have, until, was it this past fall that I started looking at the reserves? We haven't done that in the past, and so I think starting to take a look at these things and kind of monitoring how these funds are operating at points in time, which the end of the fiscal year is the best point in time to be looking at it. It just kind of tells us how we're driving things, how we're driving each of these individual funds. But yes, the monies would never be moved back to general fund. That would be an inappropriate transfer at that point.
These are decisions that aren't being made by me, obviously. But the good news is the money is available, and the really good news is that we need money in work comp badly. And I would recommend, just to follow up with Gary, I would recommend that we transfer $500,000. That way we don't have to come back. In the event I need more money and we need to do another budget amendment, we don't have to come back and discuss it again. We'll have $500,000 there. Then I feel pretty safe in the work comp fund. And then we can make a report and more decisions a year from now about what we should be doing in the future on that. So that'd be my advice on that fund.
And the only other thing I want to point out here, because this is a change to this fund, is you're noticing a really big decrease in the interfund revenues, but an increase in property tax. That is all reflective of part of the things that we did in order to provide us room within the general fund. So for the general fund, we still track and we figure out who owes for insurance in each of the divisions, but now we are levying direct, which we're allowed to do for this tort liability, okay? And so that's why you're seeing the change there. I just wanted to be pointed out to you.
Joyce, if you drop down to the bottom of this, line. So you see, if we transfer 500,000 now, we've still got approximately 100,000 there in excess reserves, in addition to the 312 that we're holding in reserves. And then, as I pointed out earlier, we've got another 100 grand sitting up there in the purchase services line.
I think what Joyce says, she's already submitted this.
Well, I
this
did.
pass it, amending budget, and so the next one, we'll have to add that on the
Yeah.
next one.
At the last work comp meeting, 1 or 2 sessions ago, I was speaking with Lynette and with Kirk saying, what do you feel comfortable with? Initially, we all had agreed to the 300,000, and so that's why I thought conservatively we'll start there. If you want to move more, that we're able to do that before we end the year, and that's
So-
fine with me too.
So I guess just put the next phase of that on the
Yeah.
next amendment.
I'll have it
Yeah,
noted to
just
do
add
it
the
at...
200,000 to the next one in
Yes.
September or whenever it is. and
Right,
move on.
because it published this week, and you have to publish twice before we adopt the ordinance.
What
and
happened
so-
if we didn't publish?
The mayor goes to jail.
And really,
I don't know, you could ask the liability manager here.
I don't know if that's the only thing that happens.
is the liability fund doesn't need this money.
Yeah.
I mean, it really doesn't. The work comp fund needs it. So that'd be my advice.
So just make a note to put the $200,000 on the next
Yeah,
one.
I will.
There you go. Okay.
So by the time you end this year, when we look at reserves for the end of 16, which we'll do again in next year, we'll be able to see all these movements happen and things heal themselves a bit.
Sure.
Okay? So
Okay.
I'm going to
Move
move
on
over
to
to
workman's
work
comp.
comp,
Well,
unless there was questions.
are we going to see this sheet here at the bottom with the payout stuff again? Or are we moving on to something else? The blue and the yellow?
No, I'm moving to another fund, to the work
Okay,
comp.
I've got, we're paying out, based on 2015 expenditures, we're paying $1,000 per employee out for workman comp claim. $565,000 right there in the blue?
No, this is,
No, I guess we're in the wrong place.
yeah, we're in
Go back.
liability. We need to move to the workman's comp.
Yeah.
That one was all about,
To the bottom,
what is
where
it,
the-
sewer backups and what kind of liability claims that you have through that, or accidents, things like that.
Well,
What are you talking about?
at the bottom of the
Well,
What's
liability.
bottom of
workman, it says workman's comp.
So,
We haven't got.
we haven't got to workman's comp.
Okay, let's go to
Yeah.
workman's
So we're
comp.
just getting to workman's comp, so let's start at the top and we'll get down to the bottom.
Because I'm
and
seeing
then-
something different, so.
and-
Yeah, you have 2 insurances. You have one for risk and you have one for workman's comp. So,
Okay.
okay, so on this particular
Blue lines.
fund, we don't really show too much in increases, a little increase in the interfund charges. And basically, this fund budgets to expend its reserves to an extent, okay? Because we don't know what potential claims could come in through the year. Remember, this one is funded directly from how much each person gets paid based on their work class code. And this is also the one that has the experience rating that we've talked about, that we talked about moving that up 8% per year. The cost on that is about $50,000 to do that. Right now, this is what it's programmed for. I won't finalize numbers till I know wages are kind of settled, because every time we do anything different with wages, this number can change, okay? Because if I give an increase to a wage, this number will go up. But just to give you an idea, at the end of 2015, the reserve sat at $814,000 in this fund. The actual expenditures, what we expended out in this fund in the prior year, was $565,000. So if you look at how much is coming in revenue-wise, we're building some reserves, okay? The question is, we don't know on given years whether we're going to go above and beyond that amount. That's the claim potential, right? And so what we're trying to do is get this number. That's what the reserve policy is going to say, is that we want to be at 1.5 million. If we move 500,000 in, we're at 1.3 million. And then we'll see where we end at the end of 16, and we could be building. If you choose to do anything with the experience rating, that could also help to increase it. So these are the movements that we're trying to do to make this fund be where we want it to be in the end result, I should say. I don't know if you have anything to add to that, Kurt?
Just to be clear on 2015, that year is not closed out. We still have open claims for 2015, so we don't actually know what that number is yet.
Well, I'll take that back. This number represents what we expended financially reporting
during
for
that reporting
2015.
period.
What he's talking about is claims and the date the claim initially occurs and when you end up paying those out. That's a different animal from what this represents. This represents what did I pay out? What actually happened? What left your bank account? Okay. What he's talking about is that potential. The end of 2015, the reserves that I was required to say is set aside for potential claims was about $450,000. And that's just a rough memory. I know it was 450 something. So that's what we're looking at. That's the potential claims on the ones he's talking about that haven't been finalized. And then whatever adjudication he makes or this department makes as far as a claim that comes before them and they settle, those are the potential things. And so we're just setting aside what we think to be appropriate. Our auditor would have a real big problem if my number was 450,000 and this number wasn't at least 450,000, because it means I don't have adequate reserves to meet the reserves that are being requested of us through Intermountain Claims. And so that's kind of a monitoring thing. That's why I like the end of the year snapshot. What happened to your bank account, and what are you programming as potential claims to come through in the given year?
Kurt, it seems like a lot of money, I think, for us sitting up here. It seems like a lot of money, and I get that. But are there, we do comparisons with every other thing. I mean, we do comparisons with firefighters' wages and police wages and all these things. Are there things to compare our organization and what we're spending in claims per number of employees we have compared to other cities, or are there comparisons we can make? Are we in the ballpark? Are we not safe, or are we doing marvelous?
Good question, Councilman. As far as purchasing insurance through ICRIMP as opposed to another surety, I haven't checked the market for a little while. I mean, it's been a couple of years since I've checked it, because number one, ICRIMP was the only game in town when I came here. There just weren't any other competing sureties at that time. And number two, and more importantly in my view, the rates have been pretty flat over the last 10 years with ICRIMP. And they bring expertise to the table that Allstate may not. Did I say that out loud? I didn't mean that. It's the company that came to mind first.
I wonder why.
As far as claims themselves go, the interesting thing, not interesting, but the bad thing that is coming our way is that on our sewer backup claims, which seems to drive a lot of our claims, they don't necessarily are bigger claims, but we get a number of them through the years. And the company that we have traditionally contracted with to go in and do the immediate remediation at the outset, that company is no longer doing these. And so we're now, and what we've seen is that the company that we contracted with was much cheaper than the claims that we get from homeowner X, who just goes out and purchases services from some other restoration company. I mean, those companies were charging significantly more. So we can expect our bills to go up now.
So can we not contract with a specific company to do that, or is that up to the homeowner to do that?
No, our process is that when we get notified of a potential claim, the council made the decision before my tenure here, and I think it's a good one, that we don't ask questions at the outset, we go in and clean up, because it's bad business. So we go in and clean up, then we ask questions later. And I lost your question.
Let's get back to workers'
Yeah, workman's comp. Let's stay on
Let's
workman's
get back
comp
there.
because
So
$1,000 employee seems a little high
So
to me.
let's be specific about workers' comp. How do we do comparisons with what we're paying out every year in workers' comp claims compared to other cities or businesses with the same number of employees that we have?
The only measure that I can really refer you to is that we tried to at least explore the concept of going back and hiring the state insurance fund to provide our insurance for this, and their premium was $900,000 and change. So I mean, the actual claims we're paying is well less than what we would be charged in premium costs.
Okay. And so based on what they're charging,
I deal with a lot of other cities that have work comp claims because normally they're handled in personnel as well. Comparatively, like Idaho Falls, number-wise, we are very similar. We're having the same type of claims. We're looking at training incidents with police and fire. Those are very common. Just the run-of-the-mill stuff, that stuff we can't really control. Our average claim, Councilman Ori, we're looking at that $565,000. Our average claim for last year was $7,200, which isn't much medical expenses wise. So, a stitches or something similar like that, you're looking at a couple $100 in the urgent care. It's the outlier claims, those bigger claims that drive that average up.
Okay. Now, here's my other part of the concern to me here that I'd like to have some information back on, is that we tend to retain employees, okay? So that indicates that we have repetitive individuals who are putting in claims. So in my mind, one of two things is happening. Either we have a dangerous employee or an unsafe employee, or we're doing a process that is unsafe, and maybe we need to look at how we do that process. So I'd like to see a list of, I guess we can't do it by name, but maybe by the number of employees that have multiple claims. So do we have 5 with 5 claims? Do we have 10 with 2? I see what I'm saying?
We do address those all the time.
Okay.
If I see someone with a couple non-attended claims for the month, I'll call that supervisor and say, hey, will you find out what's going on? Is it a certain process in the month that's getting them, or is it a certain procedure? We do address that with supervisors, and they take steps with that employee. What have we done unsafe here? What steps can we change? But you're right, we do occasionally have an employee that might have multiple claims in a year.
Because you made a statement there, you said training.
Training.
Well, then maybe we better start looking at how we're doing our training. See what I'm saying? Is because early on, I think it was last year, you showed a graph of our workman's comp trending claims and stuff. I think our trend was downward at the present time, but previously it's been extremely high, was extremely high. So that shows us showed me some information that there's some flexibility in what's going on, and that means that employees may not be being trained or doing the thing properly, but I think we need to look at that. And again, I don't know where that starts, whether it's HR, whether it's risk
It's
management.
injuries that occur during the course of training. You tracking with me? These are exercises that they're doing during the course of training, and they end up getting hurt. Sometimes it's training the dog. We get some bites. Sometimes it's taking somebody down. We take them down a little too hard. It's those sorts of things. And yeah, we talk about those things with the respective chiefs on a regular basis. Really, the fact is I tease them about it, but at the end of the day, I'm not going to pretend to know their business. They tell me that these trainings are absolutely necessary for how they conduct their work. It's not for me to question that, I don't think.
Well, no, maybe not. But again, if we're having consistent, repetitive injuries, I mean, if somebody's slipping a step and tearing their shin up, maybe they should be wearing shin guards. I mean, I do it when I ride a motorcycle, you know? See what I'm saying? There's a difference between saying, you know, you got an issue here, or I don't know your business. But again, common sense says if I'm tearing shins up, or if I'm smashing toes, I go to steel-toed boots, possibly. See what I'm saying? And again, there's an industry out there that does that. I think it's called occupational safety or something like that, as I recall. I mean, so.
Or if you have a department of employees, the majority of them have no claims, but then you have a select few that have 3 or 4 or 5.
And I think that's
what I want to look at here, is to see that. So, okay, thanks.
But the overall production of the program, as long as we're funding it for $250,000 less than we'd be doing it if we went back to the state group, we're still being pretty successful. Would you say that's true or not true?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
I mean, since we've gone self-funded, this program is essentially more than paid for my salary on an annual basis.
But it works until we have a catastrophic issue. That's
right.
And then I guess that's where we got the excess.
Absolutely. And we've got a couple of big ones sitting out there, and that's what makes me nervous. But having the luxury of the $900,000 in liability claims, being able to transfer $500 to that eases the tension on it dramatically.
Are we paying any premiums for umbrella?
You betcha.
Okay, so we're not completely self-insured. We got a backstop.
No, and you've got to have a pointed hat and a magic wand to figure out the formula. But the baseline is basically $500,000 is when the excess
then we
policy
go to an
kicks
umbrella
in.
policy.
And the cost of that policy keeps going up. It's gone. I think we started at 50 some odd thousand. We're now in the low 80s, something like that. Right. So it keeps going up, and there just isn't a marketplace for this. So we kind of take what we get, which is why it would be nice to build this fund so that we don't spend that money to an insurance company that hopefully doesn't ever have to pay anything anyway.
Is that $80,000 in the charges for services here? Okay, so when we look at the premium we're paying for the umbrella as part of that $694 against the claim of...
Yeah.
It'd be good to be able to beat us a little bit anyway.
Okay, any other questions?
No, I think that's great.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Things are working.
Yeah.
I'm gonna take a break.
All righty, Council, why don't we go ahead and do that? We'll take a break and then we'll come back for the revenue forecast.
Thank you, Kurt and Lynette.
We'll go ahead and get started again. Thank you for joining us after the break. We will move on to the FY17 revenue estimates and other selected topics.
Yes. So we're back on the revenue, and now we're going to talk about, I kind of have an agenda here, so we're going to talk about major non-property revenues, your sales tax, your highway user, your franchise items. There's about 10 items that we look at. Property tax situation, inflation, and real growth. So to begin with, I'm not going to make you dive into this big sheet, but just to give you the magnitude, we're going to take a look at each one of these: the sales tax, highway users, building permits, natural gas franchise fee, liquor tax, general fund interest, cable franchise, magistrate court, electric franchise, and cemetery charges, to kind of get an idea where we expect things to be when we go into 17. So sales tax, remember this, we get 2 distributions every quarter. We get one from the state and we get one from the county. It's based on 11.5% of tax, 7/10 of the 6 cent tax is equal to the revenue sharing. That's kind of the math of the object. How do they determine what we receive as a city is based on partially on market valuation and partially on population. So remember, we could have impact within our state if someone's growing really fast and we're steady as we go, it can have impact to our numbers. And if you look at the state distribution, that's kind of what you're seeing, 1.4% increase versus the county distribution. It's averaging about 4.03%. And that is because of those kind of subtle things that are happening throughout the state. And so overall, AIC is projecting an increase for us individually of about $234,779 from what our estimate is this year. And what we had programmed was 4.3 million. Yes, 4.2 million is what we have in our budget. And so right now, trending, we're gonna probably hit that. We're looking at 12 months back, so part of it's fiscal year 15, part of it's fiscal year 16, when we do the 12-month look back. And so at this point in the game, if we look at the percentages and I say, what am I going to grow? I say if the percentages hold true and we don't see growth in those percentages, we could be at about 114,240. That's kind of a conservative number. AIC kind of looks at things in a broader scope, and I think they try to interpolate and say what's population and market valuation, but they don't have numbers on this at this point, so they're making an estimate, and they're at 234,000. So you've got about 120,000 differential between the two. I think my estimate, what I would hang my hat on, is about 156,000 in increase in sales tax. That kind of gets us between AIC and between our real base conservative, because we are seeing growth. But how much growth are we going to feel because of population and market valuation? That's where the magic 8 ball would really come into play, because you're trying to forecast something that you don't have numbers on yet.
So we go to 4.35? Is that what you're saying then?
I would choose an increase. I would increase your sales tax. If it was me making the decision, I would say about 156,000 increase.
That'd go from 4.2 to 4.35?
Yeah, I didn't do the math on the percentage increase.
Well, yeah, I just rounded back to 150 instead of 150.
Well, you get two distributions, and the 1.4 is the state distribution. That's the increase we're seeing there. And then you see about 4.03 in the county distribution. So it's somewhere in the middle is where we're probably going to average. I'm saying about 156,000 in the numbers. I'm not looking at the percentages. I'm saying 114,000 would be what you would get if the percentages stayed just what they are reporting right now. That's what you would receive. AIC's higher than that because they're looking at overall state increases. Right. And so I'm saying, in my interpretation, about 156,000 kind of takes into account some growth, and it takes into account a little more conservative because we don't know what's going to happen with population and valuation, and how that could impact our state distribution.
Are you thinking in terms of any positive things like the increase in number of people, like at the FBI?
Well,
you're not projecting.
Well, it's kind of hard to project how much is that going to impact us in population. If we take a look at the end, which we will, is population. I'm just taking a look at what are the numbers driving. When we look at the 12-month look back, and I'm looking at what are the percentages when I get in my quarterly payment, like I received in April, what did that look like compared to a year ago? Well, the state distribution, it was about a 1.4% increase, okay? On the county distribution side, it was about a 4.3. So I'm taking those and saying, okay, where am I going to end up if things stay at least status quo or there's some growth? I'm saying status quo would be 114,000 additional sales tax dollars available to us overall. I'm saying there's going to be some growth. I'm thinking we can probably go higher than that. Should we be as high as AIC, that might be a little bit aggressive.
Actually, the feelings I have, Mr. Mayor, are that we are going to do much, much better. And my projection would be 250.
250, huh? Okay.
250. I've got a 200.
I'll go with Jim's 250 if he wants to.
I'm really positive about our growth.
I'm in at 250.
I got 2 at 250. I'm really comfortable at 200.
I can drop down to that if I'm forced to.
If 250 is what the council feels good with, and, because I see a lot of growth happening. I see a lot of things that are happening.
I mean, last week I just had such incredible sales from people coming from out of the area.
Well, and there are some developments happening. There are some developments happening, and there are some new things in. But that's okay. We got a 250. Roger, what do you think?
I'd say 200. I think that we will have to grow a lot to even stay status quo with the rest of the state, because there's a formula for population growth. And other parts of the state have been growing much faster than us. So I'm more inclined to the 200.
I got 200, 2 at 200, 2 at 250. I got one that will bounce back to 200.
I'll go 200, I mean $50,000.
There's 200 there, so let's put in 200.
200 on that one?
I will acquiesce.
That takes the 4
Well, here's the good news. If we come in higher, we build reserves.
Yep.
Didn't know I said first week.
So that's,
I'm really excited.
so we ready to move on?
We're moving on.
Okay, and this is just explains to you the revenue sharing formula and how it works and how it's apportioned by population and market valuation on the state distribution. And on the county distribution, it's a magical formula, and you can read about it here at this point. Since we've made our decision, I'm going to move on to highway user. Okay, this one, remember last year in July, we went up 7 cents, plus there was an increase on registration fees. The 7-cent increase occurred in July of 2015. We budgeted $2,300,000. We went up by $500,000 from the prior year in 16. So that was our forecast, and it was kind of a what-if forecast based on information that was coming from the state to know how we were going to get impacted. It looks like we should hit our goal of the $2,300,000. What AIC is telling us is they expect only about a 1% increase. If I take my current budget of $2,300,000 and I only increase it by 1%, it would take it up to $2,323,000. AIC is giving us $2,375,000, but remember, this is another distribution that is based on population. So if we have people that are outpacing us in our distribution mapping from the prior year, we could lose some dollars. And I'm just trying to be cautious so you understand that part of it. My rough estimate was to increase it more than the $23,000. It was to go to $2,350,000. And that's kind of somewhere in the middle, because I think we'll have some impact, but I don't know how much.
And this is based on highway users, so with gas prices lower and people driving more.
No, the fuel tax is the same.
The fuel tax stays the same no matter how much, as long as people are
So
driving.
they're buying more fuel.
They're buying more fuel. That's what I mean.
You're okay.
So I've got 2 at $2,350,000 over here. I got 3.
That's 350.
Yeah.
Okay.
350.
$2,350,000.
Yep.
Bannock County Road and Bridge. I love this story. You can see, based on our budget for this year, we're at $390,000. Last year we ended at $600,000, and right now we're above the $390,000 by $226,000, and we have another large payment that will come in July. Now, understand, we don't control this one. This is controlled by the county, and we didn't realize they decided to take more money, levy for more taxes, and then the impact of highway user dollars, which also come into this fund, has played a role, and so that's why we've been shifting. If you see the 13 and 14, that's more the status quo that we've experienced in the past. All of a sudden in 15, we're skyrocketing. That's even before the increase in the highway user tax. So that was Bannock County levying more dollars for which we get a distribution of it, and that's where this is coming from.
And is there intent to keep that levy there?
That was my understanding from Christie.
Now,
They have needs within the county that they are trying to meet.
in the future then, can the state start retaining more of that rather than distributing it, or is that a...
Are you talking about the highway user
Yeah.
portion? Well, they can always change the formula at any time that they, I mean, which they've done to us in the past on other things, but I haven't heard anything where that distribution is changing. It's still based on...
What's your recommendation?
On this particular one, I am recommending an increase of 300,000.
So to go to 690 is what you're saying?
Yeah, we'd go to 690 instead of 390.
Got one yes. I got one that has now given me answers both ways. I got 2 yeses.
Okay, bobblehead here.
That's what you were doing. Are you yes?
Yeah, I'll go yes.
Kay's got a yes. I got 4 yeses. Roger?
I'm not comfortable with that now, but...
Okay.
690.
Because that's almost
Well, that's huge.
80% increase.
Well, I can tell you this.
We got another 200 coming in this year.
You had 200 more in 15, and that's before the highway user tax came through. Then they levied more, which she told me when we went into 16 after the fact, which meant that you're 226 ahead of the game. We get in small incremental payments every month from the county. July will be another big one. And so if we're already 226,000 ahead, the odds are we're probably going to surpass the 300 mark.
Yeah.
I think I'm still being conservative.
I'll go with the majority.
I think so.
And for this budget cycle, politically, nothing's going to change.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, no, I think we're good there.
690.
I mean, you have to
690,
monitor all these for
174,
legislation
whatever.
changes and what could possibly come down the pipe. But for 17, I think we're fairly safe with that. So are we good on that one?
Yep.
Okay. Building permits. This is another good story. I'm liking this session already. Okay. How do I want to start this? If you look back at 2011,
I would start it with Lynn has done a great job.
Lynn did a great job.
It's all up to him.
But he's retiring.
That's right.
We appreciate Lynn, don't we?
did the word get out? He's retiring? Is that why?
He's not allowed to. Okay, in 2011, we were about at 652,000. And if you notice, we really dropped in 2012, 2013, and 2014. You can feel the effects of the slowdown or the recessionary time, right? But if you see where we ended in 15 at 631,000, we're starting to creep back up there. And right now, our trailing 12 month is 854,000. Now, there's some major construction happening, major permits that have gone out. I think that's kind of a high end. And then, of course, this is just kind of giving you an idea what's happening in the building and construction activity that was reported on in the financial report this past year. But building numbers compared to 2011, we're seeing increased residential and commercial growth. I'm recommending that we go to a range that's near the fiscal year 2011, about 675,000, which would increase you 171,000 over your current budget. And I have discussed this with Lynn, if you want to discuss it more. He's in agreement with the numbers that we're claiming at this point.
So that's, I think, go back to 2011, 650, somewhere in there.
So 675 is what the suggested is?
That was my
Good?
suggested.
Good?
Yep.
Sounds like we're all good. 675,000 there.
Natural gas. This one is based on 3% of gross revenues. It's the fee for the use of public right-of-way. Revenue goes to the general fund in fiscal year 16, and it will also do that in fiscal year 17. This is a change that we did. Part of the reason is because of the levy limitation we had in 16, as well as what we would continue to have in 17. It used to go to this revenue used to go to the street fund, but it's allowed to go to either place. It's our choice. And because of our limitation on levying, it's really important that it goes back into the general fund. It's influenced by natural gas commodity prices as well as growth and severity of your winter season. So when we look at the history, 2011, 434,000. We drop in 12 and 13. We come back up a little bit in 14, and we drop back down in 15. Right now, our trailing is at about 360,000. Right now, our budget is 375,000 for fiscal year 16. I'm recommending that we drop that back to the 12 and 13 numbers, to the 365. It's a slight decrease, but I think it keeps us more in the ballpark.
Right. So I think, Mayor, with global warming, we know that those gas prices are going to start.
That's right. So I've got a 360. You good with that?
365?
360 is what I've got on the table right now.
I'd go 65.
365.
Okay, 365.
I got 3 at 365.
Okay.
You all right with 365? Okay, 365.
Okay.
I'm going to have to defer on this next one.
I don't. Looking at the political cycle that we've got coming, I think we could double it.
And I was going to say decrease it. After operating cost in fiscal year 17, 50% to the state, 50% remains. This kind of gets into the distribution and how it plays in. The fact that we are a city with liquor stores, we get a little bit bigger distribution. This money does go to the general fund. We budgeted $587,000 in 16. There was a state take that increased 2% per year until it reached its 50%. That was fiscal year 14. That's completed. So if we kind of take a look at where the numbers are here between 14, 15, and what our trailing average, I'm recommending go with the trailing average of 575. It's a slight decrease of about 12,000, but I think it's probably
Safe.
I agree.
unless the election year really turns into a heyday, as Councilman Brown's saying.
I like that.
But I can't forecast that.
I think you look at either side, though, I think Councilman Brown has a pretty good point, regardless of who's on.
Yeah, I'm okay with 575.
Yep.
575, 575, 575.
Okay, general fund interest. This is earnings from our invested cash. Most is in the state pool or bank money market funds. The rates have remained low. I don't think they'll go any lower. Capacity fee lawsuit. This is what prompted our allocation change. We used to allow each of the utilities to realize their investments and to realize the interest allocation, and some select funds would receive their interest allocation. State law allows us to take all of it to the general fund. When the lawsuit occurred and we lost the pilot transfer, one of the changes that we made was to move this all back to the general fund. So you don't have a lot of history here, because the lower numbers are when the allocation was occurring and everybody was getting their share. So when you look at 14, 15, and the trailing average, that's where you're looking towards to get kind of an idea of history. I'm recommending we stay with the 12-month trending. That's my recommendation.
I'm good with that, Mayor.
At 204?
Yep.
Okay. Mike, you all right?
Okay.
Jim?
Perfect.
Okay, 204.
Okay, cable franchise, 5% of gross earnings. The Video Services Fund receives the revenue. You can see some history here, and you can see how it's declined over time. The trailing average is 285, but what I did was I took a look at the last 3 quarterly payments, and they have been averaging between 60 and 65,000, which means your recommended range would be 240 to 260. And right now, our current budget is at 270.
I'd stay on the low end of that.
I would too.
240.
Yeah,
That's not bad.
I would agree.
240, I think I've heard everybody say.
Except me,
Oh, what do you want?
250. I was going to split the
Okay, I
difference.
got 250 and the rest
But since I'm outnumbered, I'll just go with 250.
240. I honestly thought I heard you say, yep.
I'll do a better job.
Okay, 240.
Okay, magistrate
Court's
court.
another one.
These are the city fines from the court system. They're sent to the general fund. In the past, they've been receipted into the legal department. We're now going to be receipting those into, starting in 17, into the police department. It's kind of one of those things. Who really earned it? Was it the officer that stopped the person and fined them, or is it the attorney that prosecuted for it? I think you could go either way. We're going to move it to the police department fund. It still benefits the general fund, so there's really no change in the overall aspect there. Fiscal year 13 actual was $249,000, which was the lowest on the system since fiscal year 98. County collection issues and number of citations, all this stuff has the impact. Some improvement noted, but hard to predict. I'm saying we stay with the 12-month average at the 294, even though 15 ended high. I mean, you're trying to predict how many citations, how many people pay their citations, and so I think
Much is turned to collections. And,
yeah, so I think the trailing 12-month is probably the best estimate that you're going to come with this one.
I'm okay with
294?
Yeah.
Okay with that.
294.
Okay. Electric franchise. This is 1% of gross revenues. It's the fee for the use of right-of-way. It's budgeted in the street fund in 16, but we are moving it back to the general fund in 17. It used to be there many years ago. I can't remember what year it was that we moved it to the street fund. I know it was during my tenure here, and I've been here 14 years. I want to say around the 2006 time period. The revenues have remained consistent with the fiscal year 2014 actual. We're budgeted right now for $430,000. I think we'll probably hit that in the 12-month average. I'm recommending to stay with the 12-month average of 428. It's a slight decrease of $2,000, but it keeps you on the conservative side.
I got one yes. Mike?
What?
Are you okay with the 428, or you want more?
I'm okay.
Okay.
Next time start on there, because this isn't
I will.
as
Good,
sticky.
good.
It is decidedly so.
Yes. All of them,
Decidedly
yes.
so.
428.
I follow. I make all my business decisions this way now.
Well, it's a good consultant.
Start down there with DF Hutton, would you?
I'll do it.
The Magic 8 Ball on my phone.
Cemetery charges for open, closed services and plot sales. This is sent to the cemetery fund. It's impacted by rates, interments, plot versus ash choices. It was impacted during the recession, some rebound since. Fiscal year 2016, we budgeted $300,000. We may hit the marker. Our 12-month average is 296. I'm saying just to go with the 12-month average.
Well, I like 295. You come up with...
You know what, I'm not, hold on. I'm going to start over here.
Okay.
Should we confer first?
See, this is why I start on this other end over here, because nobody on this side will make a
For
decision.
$1,000.
I'm going to go with 293.
Okay, I got one 296.
293.
You're too late. We got a 296 on the table. Are you in or out? 296.
I'm going 295, then I must be...
I was going to go 290. Jim was going to go 297. We split the difference at 293.
Well, and I had a 296 before you two could figure it out, so. Are you out of the
All
296 or no?
Yeah.
Yes.
You're in? 296?
You're going to know from now on which end of the podium you're on.
Well, I always start over here for that reason. 296.
Okay.
Man, so much for conferring.
Separately.
Okay, now we're into property tax.
It
This is
looks
kind of
good, though.
a great chart because it kind of shows you where we've been and where we are right now. And you really can see between
Yeah, if you rotated
about
that...
13
flat.
to 16, you're not going to see much. You're just seeing little movements up and down. Our last big growth period was in 13. If I'm looking at my chart right here. No, in between 12 and 13, yes. So
So when is this actually going to be determined as the actual value? Because I got property tax bill things yesterday.
Yes, what they do is, right now, it's going to go through the appeal process. So we don't know what's going to happen until they get through that part. I'm told that we will have concrete numbers somewhere around the 11th of July, which is like right before we have to make final decisions. And then I get a letter, usually by the end of July, saying this is what your valuation is, okay? So that being said, you're making guesstimates at this point. What is it going to increase? Is it not going to increase? I haven't heard anything in particular that tells me we should expect a big valuation change. So at this point in the game, I stay to the conservative side until I know something more hard and fast.
I'm willing to stay on the conservative side also, but I think there will be some additional building that will come on the books.
Well, I will say this, last year's, and I don't know if I put the slide in there for that. Might not have. Yep, I did. So hang on a second, and I'll get to what I think you're talking about there. This is just another look-see, just saying what's the change in percentage per year. So your last big growth spurt was the 10, I'd say the 12 to 13, because you went from 6% growth in 12 to 3%. So between those 2 years, you made some big drives up. Then we've just been kind of...
That's the county value of properties right there. Okay.
Yes. And these are the valuations that come through. This is what determines, you determine how much you're going to levy. This valuation determines what your rate's going to be, which we have really not much control
I've got a
over.
sheet that I'd like to share with you sometime as it relates to actual appreciation of sales of property.
Okay.
And it's a little more optimistic than this.
Well, this is just what is a hindsight review.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. And of course, I haven't received anything from the county giving me any indication as to where they're heading. The last time I met with them, they said it'd be the first part of July. So hopefully before we go to publish, if there's some big increase, then we can make changes and do things at that point.
Would anybody be interested in that actual increase of property value?
Well, it would be interesting to see,
I'll get you a copy.
but that's an estimate, I understand, and the county commissioners are the ones that actually set the solid number. Yeah,
This is the appraisal.
And so this is what we will be able to levy the taxes on, not anything else. Is that correct? But I would be very interested in seeing that.
And you can see where between 15 and 16, we had that slight decrease, and that had some impact in our general fund because of the levy limitation. That's why you have to pay attention. There's a lot of moving parts on this, and that had some impact to us. And hopefully we're through that hurdle, and we're going to see the positives coming through at this point.
Sure. Roger had something.
Did you not talk to them about the impact of the homeowner's exemption, because it goes up by 5,000, and that's kind of a...
Well, if you remember the one chart I showed you, how there's not a correlation, because let's say I own multiple properties, I count 2 of these as residential, and all of a sudden I move out of the area and I throw them all up into rental property. You lose the homeowner's exemption. So you have this volatile swing happening, so you can't look at it and say, okay, I've got increased.
Yeah, but you could say that 70% of your properties are probably stable.
Yeah.
You know what I mean, there's a formula.
Yeah, when I looked at the chart, it showed that even though I might have had a decrease in, or an increase in homeowner's exemption, the valuation changes and stuff, it didn't have that same kind of impact. So it's kind of one of those things that, as they've told me, that's the hardest thing to predict is and if the rate, the amount of property value goes up, which is what you're talking about, because we're going to have an increased rate this year.
Could be, but the trend line doesn't show that.
Yeah.
The trend line shows that other parts of the state have had dramatic property valuation increases.
Yes.
And the homeowner's exemption is based on a state average, not our average.
But it's
so
moving.
It can nail us if we are way behind the trend. then we're going to be eating more of that $5,000 as a reduction.
Well, and it depends on the values of your property within your state. If your state, or within your city, because if my property, even though that homeowner's exemption went up, if I don't have a property that means I get more exemption because I'm past that limit.
Yeah, but there's a sizable amount of our houses that are beyond the 89,000 valuation.
Yeah.
Or it's going to be 95,000 or 96,000. But anyway,
there could be some impact. We don't know.
It's going to come out of some of the houses because they didn't go up, but the other did.
As they indicated, Jared Stein and Anita from the assessor's office, it's very hard to predict that because there's a lot of moving parts on that particular one. It's not just as simple as the rate, the amount going up. It's the change in property purpose that can have its impact. Even though I have this increase, I had so many that moved out of homeowners exemption that the overall impact was kind of flat. And so that's why you see nothing that you can correlate to. You can't correlate and say, if I have a 2% increase in homeowner exemption value, I'm going to have 2% less in my market valuation. You can't get that correlation. The numbers don't drive that way. And I took a look at it, and I gave you guys, I can't remember what it was. I'll have to dig out the notes on it. But it just kind of showed there wasn't a correlation. You couldn't take percent change and actually see percent change in market valuation because of it. So I say that because I think it's just a hard one to predict. And so we kind of have to wait till those market valuation numbers come in. And that's the appeals process. People could be appealing because they're saying I should have a homeowner's exemption and I don't, or they could be appealing because they don't agree with the value. And it could be commercial versus residential property. So that's why they tend to not want to give you any numbers because they don't know what is going to happen in this next month. Okay, here's the story on property tax. You have prior foregone, which is $1,460,000, and then you have the 3% that you're allowed, $807,000, and last year's new construction was $222,262. I think conservatively, that's a number I would be looking at for new construction. That was about, when I looked back at history, that's about what you were, in normal years, that's what you would on a regular basis see, okay? And so if I was to predict and add into my model, so to speak, saying I don't want to take more taxes, and I'm predicting market valuation is going to come in flat, I would have $222,000 I could take without any impact to my rate. And that's the new construction I think you're talking about.
Yes.
And I'm thinking, $222,000 is about, we had volatile years where you had some really big ones and then you have some that are a little lower, but on average, 19 to 22 million was about what new construction totaled, and that's what this equates to, is that. And so you could potentially, I think, take that much more in property tax and be pretty close to what you would end up with. And I don't know, there's only 2 businesses that I know that could have some impact to us on valuation, but they're not completely gone, so it's not like, I don't know how much impact this coming year.
People leaving?
The Kmart store and the Farmers Insurance, those 2. But the buildings are still going to exist. I think our biggest impact might be on Kmart's side with the personal property inside. But still not enough to where I could predict a big change. Not anything like what the change between Heinz and Amy's, okay? So that, at this point, this is my conservative approach, would be to say you could take $222,000 more without too much impact.
Don't look that way, look this way.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
No, that's fine.
You good? I forgot what way I was supposed to look. We got a decision maker now down here. We got 222 is fine.
222,
222, 262.
You're just talking about new construction.
Yes.
Yeah.
There've been some
Looks like we're
lookers
good
at the
on this
Kmart
side.
building.
Good on that side.
There have been lookers. Well, that would be nice if we could fill it up. So anyway, that's kind of where we sit with property tax.
So why don't we plan on that 220?
It was another Mexican restaurant, but no, it wasn't.
So just so you're aware, the consumer price index was less than 0.25% in growth this past year. You can really see how it's almost flatlined there at the top between the 237,433 to the 237,838. I just wanted you to kind of see that so that you know as a whole what we're kind of looking at for potential impact. Population, this is what we've been trending over the last few years, and you can kind of see a little bit of the highs and lows. And so hopefully your assessment on FBI and the people moving in will make that number go the other way. Then decision sessions and road ahead. June 9th will be another budget development session. We'll be in the decision-making session, so I'll be working on the tax solution approach. It'll be after the regular study session. If you need, we will meet again on the 16th for continued decision-making. June 30th, if needed, and then July 14th, that'll be the final review, because after that Friday, I have to have the publication ready to send so that we can start the process for the public hearing. So that's kind of the road that we have left to hoe. Just to give you an idea, I had some prelim numbers. I know you took higher on some things than me. Just to let you know, if we did everything you agreed to today, it's going to be higher than this because, like I said, you went higher on a couple things. I had it at $905,262 of additional new monies coming in. At this moment, we were at about $949,000 that we needed to be whole. I know with some of the decisions you made, I've probably hit that mark, and I have not taken into account what we're going to do with our water revenue. That's not in this yet. So just so you kind of have an idea where you're at and where you're heading for
Water
next
revenue
week.
of what we sold.
Leases.
Leases. Yeah. And so I'll have that on the tax solution, but I guess what I'm indicating to you is that we've solved a lot of our problems in the decisions that we've been able to make with revenue today. So you should be able to make some clear choices next week as you move ahead. And if there's anything additional that you want in the primary things that I'm thinking of is we'll throw back some of the things that you've cut in case you want those back in, and I will have the water revenue in there. I will also have in there the software for the IT using their reserves, and then the leases for the equipment for police and fire, the potential costs there for the lease payments, so that you can make your decisions on any of those items. If there's anything else, let me know and I will add that in.
One area, and I think early on in the discussion when we were talking about tax increase, I think Councilman Bray mentioned this, that he was in favor of, or he would be in, and don't let me put words in your mouth, Councilman, but I agreed with it, is that he felt that he would be in agreement in raising taxes if it solved a long-term problem. So if you can put some information into that.
Well,
if we're using that.
What long-term problem?
Well, something that solves, we talk about long-term or one-time money.
Right. So, and when next week, I know it's in the publication right now, but in the budget amendments, I'm taking care of some of this capital items that were needed, especially in the street department. And so we're trying to address some of those with the excess reserves that we can. And
we're doing a roof now, right?
The roof has been bid out. We have $202,000 available in the building renovation fund for the roof. And I haven't heard what the numbers are going to be when it comes in yet. So our expectation was around that amount, but also in emergency repair, I have another, I think it was $178,000. I'll have to double check it for you, but so I've got plenty to cover the roof. Airport has had to, one of the budget amendments is to increase or allow for the use of his reserves that we left set aside because he's had some of his roof issues occur this year. So he's going to burn about 91,000 of his reserves, but it's going to take care of these big, I call it a one-time capital correction that you needed to make. So we're trying to address those things as best we can. If there's anything in addition that I haven't accounted for, please let me know and we can go over that. I'll give to you tonight, I'll hand out it's actually in the box right by our office, the budget amendments detail. And so you can see where I'm addressing some of these issues already.
Thanks, Joyce.
You're welcome.
Okay, super. Okay, any other questions for Joyce? All right, thank you very much. Thanks for your work, and looks like we're in really good shape right now. So, moving forward, hopefully by next week we'll be in good shape to have a real good idea of where we're headed. So,
yeah, I think so.
Thank you for joining us this morning. We are adjourned from this meeting, and the council will have a working lunch that we'll move into. Thank you.
Just in case you